Chapter 390. Jingwan naturally sensed the subtle change in the atmosphere. Perhaps Granny Gong was just shocked. But her husband, could it be that he was unwilling to wear women's clothing and was willing to sacrifice himself just to make her happy? He was so calm and even shameless before, but was it also to hide his emotions perfectly? If that was the case, there was no need at all. Even if he rejected her, she would not be angry. At most, she would feel a little regretful. Li Hongyuan looked at Jingwan's expression and knew that his wife had probably thought of something again. However, with the current atmosphere, it seemed that he could not blame her. He beckoned Jingwan to come closer and held her jade-like hand. His expression had already softened. Wan, what are you thinking about? Jingwan did not hide it, nor did she hesitate. Yuan doesn't like this outfit, so take it off. Li Hongyuan raised his eyebrows and smiled. It's normal for men not to like women's clothing unless they have special preferences. However, I'm not unwilling. I try it once in a while and I think it's quite interesting, so don't think too much about it. I was just thinking about something else. That's good. But Yuan, if you don't like something you have to say it directly. You're the king of hell, so you can do whatever you want. Even if it's because of me, you don't have to force yourself. Of course you can't touch other women. This is absolutely mandatory. It's the same whether you're happy or not. There's no room for discussion. The second half of her sentence was fierce. I already said that you're a little vinegar jar, but you still don't admit it. Look at you now. Li Hongyuan reached out and pinched her face. Who said that I don't admit it? What's a vinegar jar? I'm a sea of vinegar. If I overturn it, I don't know how many people will drown. So don't provoke me. Yes. Even if you don't think for yourself, you have to think for the people of the world. Even the king of hell can't touch thousands of people's lives. Stop talking nonsense. Jingwan couldn't help but hit him again. However, her strength wasn't even enough to tickle Li Hongyuan. Besides, if she hit him too hard, she would also feel bad. Looking back at Nanny Gong, who was as usual, Lin Mingya found that Nanny Gong was smiling. Although Lin Mingya was used to getting along with Li Hongyuan naturally as long as she was in Prince Yu's mansion, she still felt a little embarrassed when she saw Nanny Gong's expression. Granny, I'll have to trouble you. This is what this servant should do. Nurse Gong came forward and stood behind Li Hongyuan. She looked at Li Hongyuan's face in the glass mirror. Wang Fei's makeup skills are unparalleled. For example, they could make slight adjustments on their faces so that they looked completely different. It was a kind of disguise. It was completely different from Jingwan's. In Qi Yuan, it was popular for men to dress up as actresses and women to sing as martial artists. In particular, the opera troupes that often went in and out of the inner residence were basically all women. They could play all the male roles. In fact, there were 2 or 3 famous opera troupes in the capital city that were all made up of women. Whether it was men dressed up as women or women dressed up as men, these people looked similar to the other gender in appearance, unlike Li Hongyuan, who was very different. Of course, it was more difficult to do it. This is nothing. It's just ordinary. Thinking of the makeup in her previous life, it was amazing that it was comparable to plastic surgery. Nurse Gong only thought that Jingwan was being modest. Only Li Hongyuan knew that what she said was probably true. Granny Gong thought for a while, then took off the crown on Li Hongyuan's head and combed his hair. Starting from the top of his head, she coiled the strands of hair into a bun. Her movements were quite fast. She didn't need to use clips or anything like that. She used an extremely short jade hairpin and gently inserted it into Li Hongyuan's hair. Jingwan actually quite admired her for this. Of course, this was only the part near the head. When she tied the hair into a bun, she still had to add some tools. Otherwise, the hair would not be able to be pulled up and the corresponding shape could not be made. It should be noted that Li Hongyuan's hair was also very well taken care of. It was soft and smooth. Under normal circumstances, the more it was like this, the harder it was to take care of the hair. However, Li Hongyuan basically did not have short hair. Therefore, he did not need hair oil. After it was done, it would not look coarse. Jingwan was not envious, because her hair was even better than Li Hongyuan's. Jingwon looked at him happily. Occasionally, she would help him or pass him something. The biggest difference between her current life and her previous life was that she did not need to wear a wig. In Jingwon's opinion, the wigs in those ancient costumes were definitely a pain. This time, Lee Hongyuan did not close his eyes. Although he could not see the back, he could definitely see the top of his head. In the end, the bun was completed. Jingwon raised her eyebrows. The 9 rings of hair were interlocked. There were a lot of rings, but they were not messy. Each ring was about the thickness of a finger. It looked very beautiful. 9 was the extreme number and was regarded as noble. It was said that during the reign of an emperor, the queen's mother descended to the mortal world. Her beauty was outstanding. Therefore, this combination of beauty and immortality was naturally favored by many, and was regarded as one of the noble hairstyles. However, under normal circumstances, it was still suitable for the palace. Although there was no restriction, people below the rank of concubine did not dare to wear such a hairstyle. Wouldn't that be asking for trouble? The most noble empress naturally preferred the Lingyun hairstyle. Therefore, Nanny Gong dressed her according to her identity as the imperial noble consort. This hairstyle was very suitable and matched the clothes very well. After that, it was the hair accessories. These things did not need to be said. Jingwon had a lot of them. Not to mention other things, just on this dressing table, whether it was individual pieces or a set, there was no need to look elsewhere. At this time, Nanny Gong did not hesitate. Because earrings were not suitable, she used another hair accessory to make up for it. The hairpin was placed on the head and hung naturally from the back of the ear until it reached the middle of the neck. When the dressing was completed, Jingwon's eyes were shining. Her husband was so beautiful, so beautiful, so beautiful. Nanny, how much does a yuan look like the imperial noble consort now? At least 9. His Highness is a man after all. The bridge of his nose is more prominent. Although the whole outline is covered, the essence is still the same. If it is further away, it should be more similar. When Princess Consort is painting, if you want to be more partial to the imperial noble consort, you can weaken it appropriately. Jingwon nodded to show that she understood. Then she let Lee Hongyuan turn sideways and take a few steps back. My husband is so beautiful. The more I look at him, the more beautiful he is. How can there be such a beautiful person in the world? Jingwon's face was intoxicated. She deliberately showed a love-struck expression. She was about to drool. She said that Pei Xiuying looked the most like the imperial noble consort in the past. Obviously, her husband's current appearance was worlds apart. Jingwon even felt that after seeing such a stunning beauty, she would not have any reaction when she saw another beauty in the future. One really likes the imperial noble consort more, right? Lee Hongyuan said with a gentle smile. Perhaps because the makeup was completed, he was more charming than before. Initially, Granny Gong still missed Lee Hongyuan's face a little. However, when she saw Lee Hongyuan's expression, that little bit of nostalgia immediately disappeared. When Lee Hongyuan's face was expressionless, it was more than 90% similar. But now, to hell with the similarity. The imperial noble consort was a woman who was as gentle as water. Even if she was extremely beautiful, she was not ostentatious and would not have a seductive appearance. But now the prince was displaying these qualities to the extreme. For most men, such a woman was very attractive and many women might be envious. However, Nanny Gong had no feelings at all, especially when this man had a bad record. It should be known that because he was good to Jingwon, Nanny Gong had a better impression of him. But Jingwon was different. She had never seen the imperial noble consort. She only knew that this was her husband. No matter what, he was the most handsome in men's clothes and the most beautiful in women's clothes. However, when she heard Lee Hongyuan's words, she immediately restrained her expression and became normal. Well, when my husband is dressed normally, he can't help it if he is too obsessed with it. But it is different when you are dressed as a woman. You will only look at it and won't think too much. Really? Lee Hongyuan said. He slowly stood up, raised his arms slightly, and straightened his clothes. Needless to say, her aura immediately came out. She was noble, elegant, and magnificent. Empress Sun, noble consort Su, and so on were all inferior to her. Well, he was a little too tall. Although she was not sure, Jingwan was 100% sure that his net height was more than 180 meters. And the 9 bun of immortals was a high bun. Combined, it was definitely more than 190 meters. Even if he stood next to Luchengdi, he would not only be crushed by his height, but also his momentum. It was unlikely that any emperor would be able to control such a person. Yep, if she was really a woman, she could try to walk the path of an empress. If she had the same level of intelligence and skills, she might even become the first female emperor in history. Jingwan was thinking about it, but Li Hongyuan had already walked in front of her. Even now, Wan, you don't have to endure it. After all, you are essentially the same. Jingwan glared at him fiercely. Did he have to be so outspoken? Jingwan secretly glanced at Nanny Gong. Nanny Gong just pretended that she didn't understand. I'll leave first. Then the two masters could do whatever they wanted. After Nanny Gong went out, Li Hongyuan was really unscrupulous. He directly hugged Jingwan and kissed her with the current makeup. The scene was absolutely hot and passionate. If it was seen by people who didn't know, the scene would be absolutely beautiful and make people blush and their hearts beat faster. The makeup will be ruined. Let go of me. Li Hongyuan finally let her go. He pinched her chin and said with a smile, "Let Wan try it. Let's see if she will be impulsive." Jingwan was speechless. Just as he said, they were essentially the same. How could she be indifferent to it? Okay, sit back. It's time to start painting. Otherwise, how long are you going to wear this? If it was a meticulous brush painting, it would be impossible to finish it in a short time. But if it was a freehand brushwork, it would be much faster. This situation might not happen again. So, how could Jingwan let go of such an opportunity? If only there was a camera, there would be no need to beautify or edit the picture, and it would be absolutely beautiful. However, Jingwan was going to draw the shape of the painting that she was going to give to Luchengdi, and then slowly color it. Jingwan roughly figured out the imperial noble consort's temperament based on what she knew. Now she needed a suitable expression. Jingwan didn't hesitate to let Li Hongyuan do all kinds of poses and expressions, but he didn't seem to be satisfied. Was it because he didn't have the talent of a photographer, or was the person in front of him too special? Li Hongyuan was quite interested. In fact, although he hadn't seen his birth mother, he knew what expression he showed would instantly remind Luchengdi of his birth mother. So, when it was about time, Li Hongyuan decided to do it himself. He sat sideways, supported his chin with one hand, and turned his face to Jingwan. "How is it?" Jingwan nodded hard. The expression, that's the main point. Wan, it will be very tiring. Let's talk about it when we sketch the face." Thinking about it, Jingwan lowered her head and began to sketch. The paper she prepared was almost the height of a person, but a person couldn't occupy a lot of space, so she had to add the background. Jingwan's movements were very fast, but the sketch was very detailed. After confirming that there was no problem with the proportion, Jingwan left the face to the end. Time passed slowly, and she didn't know how long it had been. The expression. Then Jingwan raised her head and was stunned for a moment. She was pure and happy. At this moment, Jingwan felt that she was really facing the imperial noble consort. Even if she was wearing a luxurious dress, she didn't feel that she couldn't suppress her. On the contrary, the perfect combination of luxury and elegance made her even more unable to move her eyes away. But it was only for a moment. Jingwan grasped the charm at this time tightly, and she drew as if she was a god. Soon she finished. Jingwan breathed a sigh of relief and looked at the paper again. Although there was no color, and it didn't feel that three-dimensional, it could indeed be said that a beauty was vivid on the paper. It was no longer Li Hongyuan, but the imperial noble consort. Regarding the background, Jingwan suddenly thought of a good electronic device. There was a zither table in front of the window, and the beauty in front of the table was sitting lazily. She wasn't playing the zither, but was looking out of the window with her chin in her hand. There was a blooming flower tree, and a few birds were either flying or stopping, attracted by her beauty as usual. Then, the beauty seemed to have heard the sound of footsteps. She turned around and saw the person who came, and revealed a pure and happy smile. The picture at that moment froze. After the background lines were not painted, Jingwon was stunned. It seemed that she didn't quite believe that this was painted by her. There was no follow-up, but it was vivid enough. The birds can't go away because of her beauty, and everyone who looks at the painting will think that her smile is for him. He will also think that this will be his best, most precious and favorite birthday gift this year. No, it should be the best in all the years. Lee Hongyuan had stood beside Jingwon and looked down at the painting. I can't bear to give it away. Lu Chengdi was such a scumbag. How could he get such a beautiful woman and not cherish her when he got her? What's the use of keeping it? Lee Hongyuan would not let it stay when it was painted like this. He can only look at it for a while. The more beautiful it is, the more painful it will be for him. But he will never not look at it. So, it was a vicious circle. She didn't know what would happen to Lu Chengdi. Thinking of this, Jingwon felt a lot better. Putting the drawing paper aside, Jingwon began to paint her own painting. She didn't have to imitate anyone. Lee Hongyuan could do whatever he wanted. She didn't have to deliberately pretend to be a woman. Of course, she just didn't act too manly. In fact, from Jingwon's point of view, Lee Hongyuan could be in a painting at many times. For example, when he was leaning on the couch, reading, drinking tea, thinking quietly, etc. Even if he was dressed as a woman, it would not be out of place. Unfortunately, it was just a thought. Without a camera, those images could not be recorded. Perhaps when she had time in the future, she would imagine changing his clothes and painting them one by one. Jingwon's freehand brushwork might not be so good, but she was good at grasping the charm. She could make up for some shortcomings. There were a total of 4 freehand brushwork. The poses were different, but each of them had the emotions of Lee Hongyuan. Some were cold and evil, some were gentle and affectionate, some were enchanting and some were free and easy. Anyway, they were all different from the imperial noble consort. If the imperial noble consort made people want to take good care of her and even couldn't bear to blaspheme her, then the cross-dressing Lee Hongyuan on the paper made people want to pounce on him and strip him clean, whether they were really tempted by him or wanted to conquer him. If it weren't for the muscles, Jingwon also wanted to show him a shoulder or something. However, if she really did that, it would be uncoordinated. But if she wiped off the makeup on his face and painted his original appearance with half of his clothes, she couldn't imagine the scene. She was going to have a nosebleed. However, some ideas lingered in Jingwon's mind and could only be slowly realized in the future. Lee Hongyuan saw Jingwon's little evil expression. She probably thought of something that people liked. Lee Hongyuan felt that he didn't mind cooperating at all. Lee Hongyuan was still very satisfied with Jingwon's paintings. However, because it looked like a woman, his satisfaction dropped by countless percentage points. Sure enough, he still looked forward to the painting of his original appearance. Jingwon removed Lee Hongyuan's makeup. Lee Hongyuan changed his clothes and tied up his hair with a crown. The handsome Jin Qinwang returned. Jingwon hugged Lee Hongyuan's waist. Sure enough, I still like this the most. Cross-dressing and whatnot can only be considered as fun. Fun. That's not bad. Next time we can change together. Won's cross-dressing is also amazing. The key point is, it doesn't affect this husband's impulses in the slightest. Perhaps we can do it again after changing clothes. Jingwon's face was a bit dark. Do you have to keep talking about dirty in every 3 sentences? Is it really okay for you to be like this? You're also a Wangya. Where's the restraint? Where's the value? Lee Hongyuan expressed that in front of his wife. What were those things? Could they be eaten? Could they be drunk? The most important thing was, could they make his wife happy? Therefore, Lee Hongyuan was really a dragon. A dragon's nature was lascivious. It was the first time that Jingwan painted in the room. Therefore, the bedroom was actually quite messy and needed to be cleaned up. Jingwan carefully put away the painting, no matter whether it was completed or not. However, these things couldn't be seen by outsiders, let alone spread outside. Therefore, it was best to frame it herself. For Jingwan, framing wasn't a big problem. Jingwan had learned it before. At least it wasn't that good. Ordinary paintings were fine, but the ones that she valued were far from enough. Therefore, should she find time to go back to the Luo family and let her grandfather strengthen his training, or directly find a good female master from outside to teach her? Thinking about it, her grandfather seemed to be very busy recently, so it was better not to disturb him. Jingwan raised this question to Li Hongyuan. Li Hongyuan glanced at Jingwan. There's a ready-made one, but you don't use it. You have to go outside to find one. It's not that I'm bragging, but compared to the framing masters, I'm not much inferior. Jingwan was really surprised at this time. To be honest, someone really didn't have the temperament to learn this. Should it be said that a person couldn't be judged by their appearance, and the sea couldn't be measured with a pint pot? However, Jingwan didn't doubt it. Since this man dared to say it, he must be able to do it. In fact, Li Hongyuan was not only good at framing, but also very good at painting. Of course, his paintings were only of one person, and that was Jingwan. That was the only beauty that Li Hongyuan treasured in his heart in her previous life. He didn't paint very diligently. Perhaps one painting a year, perhaps one painting every 3 to 5 years. He painted and framed by himself, all by himself. When he was dying, those paintings were the only things that he designated to be buried with him. It was just that he didn't want to start all over again. After being reborn, Li Hongyuan didn't touch the paintbrush again, because Wan Wan was still alive. He didn't need to use paintings to remember her. Moreover, at the beginning of his rebirth, Wan Wan was only 2 years old. The Jingwan he knew in his previous life was the her after the hardships, so it was definitely different from this life. In this life, before he connected with her heart, he unintentionally called out Wan Wan twice, and she misunderstood that he was thinking of someone else. If he really kept the memories of her voice and smile from his previous life, how bad would it be? What existed in front of him? There was no need to reminisce about the past. Of course, those 2 unforgettable images were bound to be difficult to erase. So, until now, no one knew that Li Hongyuan was good at painting. It was also because Li Hongyuan never thought of taking out the things that Jingwan took out in her previous life in advance. Otherwise, there would be some things that Jingwan couldn't play with. Jingwan didn't use painting to make Luo Jingbua famous. However, in his previous life, Li Hongyuan really thought that the painting was created by Luo Jingbua. It turned out that it wasn't, and it belonged to his little sweetheart. As for whether it was created by Jingwan or not, Li Hongyuan didn't care. Even if it was brought by Jingwan and didn't exist in this world, it still belonged to his family, Wan Wan. Now it was hanging in Luo Jingbua. One day in the future, Li Hongyuan was bound to return it to its rightful owner. However, Jingwan didn't ask how many things this man didn't know. Their days were still very long, and they could leave it to be slowly excavated in the future. That would also be a great pleasure. After all, perhaps every time they excavated something, it would be a huge surprise. They were an old couple, and they had to occasionally relax. Then a yuan you teach me. Why don't you just let me frame it? It's not that I can't, but other things are fine, but the one I painted for you can't. I want to do it myself. Before that, I won't let anyone see it. In that case, it's up to you. However, you can take it slow. Don't tire yourself out. How can I? Look at me, I'm very idle all day. If I don't find something to do, I'll really grow hair. What is this saying? Li Hongyuan asked. This is not easy to explain. Something like growing hair, a certain someone had probably never seen it before. Perhaps he didn't even know there was such a thing. Then I won't say. Li Hongyuan pulled Jingwan and walked out of the bedroom hand in hand. The entire afternoon had been spent. Bit hungry. Li Hongyuan was a good husband who was 24 filial piety. He passed down the order to prepare the meal in advance. That, because the kitchen was not done yet, because of Li Hongyuan's words, it became exceptionally busy. However, there were enough chefs in Jin Wangfu, the kitchen was big enough, and there were countless people to help. If there was no time to call for other people to cook, the kitchen would definitely have enough food. Usually this was the case in the Wangfu, and Jin Wangfu did not lack money, so it would only be more abundant. As for the chefs, most of them had followed to Jiangnan, so they were more or less familiar with Wang Fei's taste. As for Wang Ye, there was no need to pay special attention to him. Basically, he would eat whatever Wang Fei ate. In the past, he would not eat it. As long as Wang Fei said that it was good for the body and put it in his bowl, he would eat it. In the past, Li Hongyuan's table was basically filled with meat, but now it was different. It was basically a combination of meat and vegetables. And Jingwan was not a picky eater. Even if there were some dishes that she preferred, she might order it a little more frequently, but she would definitely not eat it for 2 consecutive days. Even if it was the so-called frequent, it would probably be 2 times out of 10. Therefore, if the kitchen wanted to know her preferences, it would really take a lot of effort. Thus, the people in the kitchen naturally did not get any special favor. Of course, it was not all bad. Although there was less competition, naturally there were less dirty things. Moreover, with the reputation of the living king of hell, they naturally did not dare to not do their best. As the saying goes, if you do a good job you may not be rewarded, but if you do a bad job you will definitely be punished. In fact, as long as one stayed in Jin Wangfu for a year and a half, they would know that as long as they did their job well and did not make trouble, their days would be very good. It was not like what outsiders said, that Jin Wangfu was a dragon's pool and tiger's whiskers. However, the people in the Wangfu basically would not talk about it. After all, they did not think that they were the best. If there were more people who knew about it and wanted to rush into the Wangfu, then there might not be a place for them to stand. More importantly, when they first came in, they were warned to control their mouths. If they said something that they should not say, they would definitely not be able to bear the consequences. They were not sure if it was something that they should not say, so it was best not to say anything. There was strength in numbers. Therefore, it did not take long for dinner to be served. If one looked carefully, they would still find some differences. Not to mention other things, just the combination was not that meticulous. However, every dish was still perfect, without the slightest bit of carelessness. After the 2 people finished eating, they digested the food and then went to the study room. There were some matters that needed to be dealt with. These matters, whether or not Jingwan wanted to know, whether or not she wanted to participate, it was all up to her. Whenever she wanted to go to the study room, no matter what it was, she would not hide it from her. And the recent matters were nothing more than the things prepared by Li Hongyuan, whether they had been handed over to He Zhenwei, and the position of the envoys from each country. Of course, there were definitely other matters. Although there might be a big fluctuation in emotions when seeing it for the first time, but if she was used to it, Jingwan would also be calm and even feel that it was a trivial matter. The envoys from the former Wei will reach the capital in 4 or 5 days at most. They are really fast. Regarding Qi Yuan, they have always been the most active. At that time, the Wei dynasty was larger than the current Qi Yuan and was very prosperous. However, in the later period, it declined very quickly and was overthrown by the officials. However, it was not overthrown. After all, the blood of the royal family still existed. They just gave up the capital and moved to the north, dividing the Wei dynasty. The new dynasty was the Qi Yuan that was later changed by the Li family. Although the remaining part of the Wei dynasty only occupied less than 1/5 of the land, it survived tenaciously. Not only that, but it continued to conquer the north. Later on, it was called the former Wei. Now, it had the national strength that was not inferior to the Qi Yuan. Even if the history of the Wei dynasty was not taken into account, the former Wei existed for hundreds of years longer than the Qi Yuan. The former Wei had always wanted to take back the territory they had lost. However, the former dynasty was destroyed by the Li family, who was born with a peasant background, and a new dynasty was established. At that time, the former Wei did not gain any advantage. It was not known if it should be said that the ancestor of the Li royal family was too valiant. Although the dynasty had changed twice, the former Wei still regarded the current Qi Yuan as a part of them. They had never given up on the idea of taking it back. Therefore, no matter who occupied this territory, they were the enemies of the former Wei. As long as they could cause trouble, they would not hesitate to do so. After understanding this history, Jingwan was actually quite speechless. It had been hundreds of years, and the rulers of this territory had changed again and again. Why were they still thinking about it? They were simply crazy. However, it was not without reason that the former Wei kept thinking about it. After all, compared to the Qi Yuan, most of the former Wei's territory was much more barren. Now, their territory was smaller than the Qi Yuan, but their national strength was comparable. Naturally, they would not give it up so easily. Moreover, after this period of time, the spies left in the Qi Yuan must have sent back the news that the letters of credence had arrived together. As long as they could make the Qi Yuan bad news, it would be good news for the former Wei. Therefore, they did not care who was behind this, nor did they care if there was a problem in their country that they did not know about. Anyway, they had already come out. It was more important to see the joke of the Qi Yuan. It would be even better if they could reap some benefits from it. Therefore, the speed of their arrival was naturally fast. Originally, according to the normal speed, it would have been delayed by at least 10 days. At that time, at least the small countries would have arrived. The big countries, after all, were powerful. They were supposed to be the last to arrive. Now they were going to arrive early. One could imagine how much hatred there was. 2 princes and a princess. There are as many as 3 influential officials accompanying them. They really think highly of the Qi Yuan. However, speaking of which, the former Wei and the Qi Yuan should be of the same origin. Many of their customs and culture are similar. Even now, there are only a few differences in the language. More than 70% of the words are the same. This is even more so in terms of clothing and other aspects. From what I know, the former Wei places more emphasis on the separation between men and women than the Qi Yuan. Why would they let a princess accompany them this time? With a woman around, it's nothing more than a political marriage. The former Wei and the Qi Yuan will have a political marriage. Moreover, even if it's a political marriage, they should hand over the letters of credence to each other. After everything is done, the Qi Yuan will send someone to fetch the bride. What's going on with the princess? Where's the honor? Where's the face? Shouldn't the former Wei place more emphasis on women? Jingwan was puzzled. Even if they're mortal enemies, they can still marry each other. When there's peace, the princess will naturally be married. When there's war, the princess will naturally be abandoned. There's nothing strange about her being the first to die. As for bringing her along, who knows? Maybe their target isn't the Qi Yuan. Compared to the former Wei and the Qi Yuan, other countries aren't as particular. It's normal for them to send their people directly. Jingwan frowned. 2 countries secretly colluding in the territory of a third country. It doesn't sound reliable no matter how I think about it. Li Hongyuan was amused. Why do you care so much? They're not even worried, but you're still worried. What does this have to do with being worried? I just don't know what those people of yours are thinking. Maybe they think that the most dangerous place is actually the safest place. However, under my watch, I will never let them succeed. Jingwan glanced at him. Not only would he not let them succeed, but based on this person's behavior, it was more likely that they would become enemies if the alliance failed. Li Hongyuan smiled but didn't say anything. So what if they were? When the Qi Yuan wasn't strong enough, it was natural for them to restrain each other and wait for him to deal with them one by one. Speaking of which, in her previous life, the former Wei's target wasn't the Qi Yuan. However, the former Wei's princess fell in love with Li Hongyuan and caused a lot of trouble. In her previous life, Li Hongyuan probably didn't know what to do. After all, the flood in the south seemed to have something to do with the Pei family. Li Hongyuan was blamed and was despised by Lu Qingdi, so he wasn't in a good situation. The former Wei and the Qi Yuan were mortal enemies, but the former Wei's princess fell in love with Li Hongyuan. Who knew what Lu Qingdi would think? It was obvious that Li Hongyuan didn't have a good life. However, it was different in this life. Not to mention that there was no uprising in the south last year. Lu Qingdi was very good to his son, Li Hongyuan. In addition to the throne, he even plucked the moon from the stars. If the same thing happened again, who knew what would happen? In comparison, Li Hongyuan was more concerned about Jingwan's reaction. Just as he was thinking about this, Jingwan suddenly held Li Hongyuan's face. What if the princess falls in love with you? Was this considered telepathy? Look, Wanwan, you forgot. Isn't this your business? That's the princess of a country. Wouldn't it be inappropriate for me to make a move? What's wrong with that? If you make a move, as long as you don't kill anyone, it can be considered a small matter between women. Are you trying to spread my reputation of being jealous to other countries? Depends on how you do it. It might not be related to jealousy. Wanwan, why don't you think about it now? Why should I think about it when there's no sign of it? Besides, this is a matter of national importance. If the decision was made early on, the princess would have been informed in advance to avoid doing something embarrassing. A princess, no matter how noble and favored she is, can't go against her own country. Moreover, how much favor can a princess who is going to be used for a political marriage and brought out in such a way be? Even if she's favored, there must be other reasons for her to be pushed out. In short, she can't surpass her own country. Even if she's going to be married to Qi Yuan, she must be married to a powerful and influential person. So, I'm most likely overthinking this matter. Jingwan pinched Li Hongyuan's face. In the end, it's because your face is too attractive. Tell me, why is a man like you so good-looking? So, all of this is still my fault, isn't it? Then Wanwan, what do you think we should do? I've never heard of a man who can ruin a country because of his looks. Jingwan snorted. Maybe you'll become the first man in history. If that's the case, what should I do? Wanwan, do you want me to be disfigured? Bah, if you want the person who likes you to be disfigured, then you can't be disfigured. Was it wrong to be good-looking? Definitely not. Li Hongyuan knew that Jingwan didn't like him because of his looks. When they first met in the previous life, he still had this face, but Jingwan didn't have any emotional fluctuations. What could move her was never these things. When she calmly accepted everything you gave her, it meant that she had accepted you as a person from the bottom of her heart. I don't know, other than the people from the Ministry of Rites and the Honglu Temple, which of your brothers will be sent to receive them? Li Hongming. The former Wei has always been the most difficult to deal with. Li Hongming is the most skilled among the brothers. Li Hongyuan said with a bit of laziness. Since it's the most difficult to deal with, why not you? Jingwan ridiculed. If you really want me to go, it doesn't matter. But in the hearts of the ministers, they will definitely think. Letting Jin Qinhuang go. Is it because the border between Qi Yuan and the former Wei is too peaceful? https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6654167. HTML. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book. www.bicken.com. Bicken.com Mobile Edition Reading Website. M. Bicken. Chapter 391. If you really want me to go, it doesn't matter. However, in the hearts of the ministers they will definitely think, letting Jin Qinhuang go, is it because the border between Qi Yuan and the former Wei is too peaceful? Therefore, Jin Qinhuang was quite self-aware. If he were to receive those people, it would make people want to start a war with Qi Yuan. Not to take back their own territory, but to attack the capital of Qi Yuan and destroy the sixth prince of Qi Yuan, Jin Qinhuang Li Hongyuan. Therefore, even though they knew that Jin Qinhuang's battle prowess was very strong and could easily make people stomp their feet and vomit blood, and that he was strong internally, he would definitely be stronger externally, but they didn't dare to let him go. After all, He was an envoy and came with a friendly purpose. If he really just arrived at Chiyuan and caused a mishap, it would indeed not be easy to account for. Compared to the damage that his battle prowess could bring to the enemy, this was a matter that made people feel gratified. As expected, they were more unwilling to deal with the aftermath of the destruction he caused. This was an incomparably troublesome matter. Based on the above at this time, the ministers and Lu Chengdi wouldn't mention it. Even if they thought of it, they would resolutely not mention it. However, if anyone had the slightest hint of it, they would resolutely suppress it and treat it as if Jin Qinhuang didn't exist. In any case, he basically had nothing to do before, and now he didn't need to do anything. It would be best if he could quietly be a handsome man. Otherwise, holding his wife and giving birth to children was also fine. Lu Chengdi ordered everyone to be forbidden from looking for trouble. It was best not to go to Jin Qinhuang's place. If they provoked Jin Qinhuang, it would lead to Jin Qinhuang's appearance. It was a very normal thing. In short, it would be better if Li Hongyuan wasn't lured out of his Qinhuang Fu. These days, Li Hongyuan also basically didn't leave the Qinhuang Fu. However, he was very clear about the matters outside. A few days ago, he even specially went to the imperial court and said that he was willing to relieve Fu Huang's worries because the envoys from various countries had many things to do. Lu Chengdi almost roared. Just stay here obediently. That's the best way to relieve my worries. Sometimes, this evil creature liked to go against him. If he told him not to do something, he would do it. If he told him to go east, he would go west. He was amenable to coaxing but not coercion. The stronger his attitude was, the more rebellious he would be. Usually it was fine, but if something happened at this time, he would lose face. Therefore, he could only wipe away his tears for himself and coax him to go back. If he was really bored, he could take his wife to live in the farmstead for a while and come back for the birthday celebration. There was no one else who could coax their grown-up son into not doing anything and give him a lot of money so that he could be a dandy who only ate, drank, and played. Li Hongyuan told this story to Jingwan as a joke. You did it on purpose, didn't you? The people in the imperial court were all pitiful, and the one on the dragon throne was the most pitiful. Even if it's the truth, Wan doesn't have to say it. If I don't do it, what reason do I have to hide in the mansion? I'm a prince after all. Even if I'm an idle prince, I can't ignore it. This is considered a big deal, and it has nothing to do with the power disputes in Chiyuan. If I go to other countries, they won't try to do anything to me. Without power and influence, it's completely meaningless to form an alliance. Therefore, if it's within the scope of my scope of involvement, I won't care about it at all. There will always be people who grumble and show their attitude. If they don't want my help, it's a completely different matter. That's why I said that those people are pitiful. You've calculated everything. He was the one who played tricks and made everyone nervous. In the end, he was the most innocent and the most idle person. If some people knew about this, they would probably complain that God was unfair. In the current situation, even if I don't participate in anything, I still have to be aware that I'm being schemed against. Even if I don't participate in anything, it will still be someone else. The difference is that they don't suspect me for the time being. However, they might find out the clues in the next moment and make me the target of public criticism. Even if they suspect you in the next moment, they will need some time to verify it. Besides, if they can be sure that you're the one who suspected and implicated a series of people, then your subordinates will be too closely involved and too incompetent. According to your style of doing things, the former is impossible. Furthermore, you haven't made any mistakes in your affairs for so many years, so there's no need to doubt their ability to do things. Unless you jump out on your own, it's unlikely that you'll be at the forefront of the storm in a short period of time. Or do you think that you still have too little attention and need to attract more attention? Or are you too bored and need to find more things for yourself to do? Bored? How is that possible? I'm very busy. I'm busy accompanying my wife. Who has time to pay attention to them? Li Hongyuan was lazy. He played with Jingwan's fingers with one hand and fiddled with a pendant hanging from Jingwan's hair ornament with the other. He looked extremely bored. In fact, he didn't feel it at all. Jingwan's heartbeat was a little fast and her face was a little hot. She deliberately ignored these and joked, "You say it as if I'm more important than anything else." "That's the truth," Li Hongyuan said matter-of-factly. "If you can't have the country and I at the same time, will you give up the country for me?" Jingwan raised her eyebrows slightly and smiled. "Do you still need to say this?" In his previous life, he had already been an emperor. Even if he hadn't been, he didn't have any obsession with the throne. All his schemes were just for Jingwan to hold up the sky and let her live a carefree life, enjoying the best of everything. And these things couldn't be achieved without power. Jingwan didn't doubt his words. All that was left was feeling touched. "However, if outsiders know, I'll become a demoness who brings disaster to the country. Those who work for you will probably eat me alive. Besides, there's nothing shameful about my identity. This assumption doesn't hold in the first place. Even if I don't become an emperor, I'm still an uncrowned king. No matter who sits on the throne, the country will be in my hands. I won't let Wan suffer any grievances." Li Hongyuan had absolute confidence in this point. However, Jingwan rolled her eyes slightly. "It's already at that point. Who can stop you from sitting on that throne? Yes, for example, they don't want to sit on it or something." Jingwan felt that this man was really asking for a beating. He had worked so hard, spent so much effort, spent so much energy, endured so much humiliation, and in the end he got what he wanted so easily. The others did not even see what he had done. Once he got what he wanted, he just let it go and pushed a puppet to work for him. There was no benefit in itself, but he just sat back and enjoyed the fruits of his labor. In front of him, he did not even have the dignity of an emperor. Even if he did not go crazy, he would go crazy. However, Jingwan wasn't sure if he was joking or if he really had the idea that the throne was dispensable. She thought that she understood him, but she still couldn't figure out some of his thoughts. She could only say that this man's thoughts were really unpredictable. Ordinary people couldn't guess. Sometimes, Jingwan was actually very glad that this man didn't hide anything from her. He would show her everything. Otherwise, she would be exhausted to death if she had to play a guessing game. Jingwan didn't know that the core of this body was not normal at all. He had already cultivated to become a spirit. Even an old fox with decades of experience couldn't easily play with him. What's more, he also had the advantage of foresight. Even if there were some changes, he could make corresponding decisions according to the situation. In the previous life, he could become the final winner in the adversity, so naturally, it was not difficult for him to do so now. Jingwan had indeed experienced storms, but compared to him, she was still too far away. Jingwan might have some advantages of a more advanced civilization, but now it was useless. She couldn't play with the intrigues of the regime at all. Li Hongyuan showed her and explained to her, but she was only in the learning stage. It was estimated that during the whole fight for the throne, she wouldn't be useful. However, Jingwan was also quite self-aware. Generally, she just watched and asked when she didn't understand. She only interjected a few words in some small places. She would never open her mouth when it was related to the overall situation. She just watched and learned seriously. Although it wasn't useful now, it didn't mean that it wouldn't be useful in the future. Moreover, Jingwan also wanted to stand side by side with him. She wanted to take on things with him instead of being completely sheltered under his wings. Even if Li Hongyuan didn't mind in her life, she wouldn't allow herself to be useless. Li Hongyuan didn't mind her participation and patiently taught her. He might have the same thoughts. He gave her a chance, and it wasn't that Jingwan couldn't learn. Why wouldn't she grasp it? In fact, Jingwan was actually a very outstanding student. She learned quickly and could often draw inferences from one example. Given more time, she could become a qualified politician. Perhaps she couldn't deal with those old foxes, but it was more than enough to deal with other people. What Jingwan didn't know was that she was now handling some things for Li Hongyuan. Li Hongyuan asked her to look at those things first and then give her opinions. On the surface, Li Hongyuan seemed to have gone through them, but in reality, he was handling them according to Jingwan's wishes. Jingwan herself didn't feel it, but the shadow guards who were in direct contact with her knew best. It wasn't that they weren't surprised, but more than that, they were moved. Should they say, as expected of their master. His vision was amazing. These people didn't have the idea that women couldn't participate in politics. Anyway, as long as it was their master's decision, then it was right. They only needed to listen to their master's orders. These words don't need to be known by a third person. Jingwan tapped the tip of Li Hongyuan's nose. Look at what Wan Wan is saying. Can this husband go and have a heart-to-heart talk with other people? He didn't mind people who were loyal to him knowing, but there was no reason to take the initiative to say that they weren't. It's getting late, you should go back and rest. Li Hongyuan directly reported Jingwan. Jingwan struggled, but the result was that he hugged her even tighter. She was too lazy to make any more useless efforts. Wrapping her hands around his neck, she whispered something in his ear. Jingwan didn't say a word. He would give a response, even if it was just an sound. Following that, Li Hongyuan really stayed in Jin Qin Wang Fu and didn't go out. It could be said that outside it was very busy. He was leisurely and happy, but those who were busy like dogs were gratified. Jin Qin Wang usually messed around, but at the crucial moment, he still knew how to act appropriately. That was all they asked of him. Jingwan also calmed down now. Li Hongyuan stayed in the Fu with nothing to do. She also didn't have any opinion, and didn't feel that there was any problem with him accompanying her all day. As for the framing, Jingwan had a foundation, but it wasn't particularly good. Therefore, what Li Hongyuan wanted to do was to point out her shortcomings and then correct them. Jingwan would ponder on it herself, and she believed that the situation would naturally be much better. For Jingwan, Li Hongyuan was definitely a good teacher. He was meticulous, patient, and attentive. Sometimes he was even more serious than handling state affairs. If it was other people, they definitely wouldn't have such a good life. Just like He Ji Hai, that special teaching method, those who didn't know would think that he was the enemy of the King of Hell. Of course, most people didn't even have the qualifications to be abused. After Li Hongyuan saw Jingwan's framing from beginning to end once, he saw where the problem was. Then, step by step, little by little, meticulously to every detail. Not to mention, after 2 times, Jingwan completely understood her own shortcomings. This progress could be said to be very fast. The areas that still had problems were all her own operations. She believed that it wouldn't be long before she could reach a level that she was satisfied with. That's right, Jingwan only needed to be satisfied with herself. She didn't need to care about the views of Sir, and even more didn't need to care about other people's views. If she was satisfied, no matter to what extent, it wouldn't be a problem. Jingwan practiced framing. The rest of the time she was painting most of the time. The one that was going to be sent to Lu Chengdi was naturally the first one to bear the brunt. After all, it was very close to the birthday. As for that painting, Jingwan had put in a lot of effort. She didn't put in less effort just because she wanted to give it to a scumbag. She couldn't blaspheme the imperial noble concubine because of that scumbag. She was a beautiful woman. More importantly, she was her husband's birth mother. She was the one who gave her husband life. Even if she didn't see a Yuan's birth and didn't participate in his growth, Jingwan believed that her motherly love for a Yuan wasn't any less. Besides, the beginning of this painting was quite good. It was even beyond Jingwan's expectations. There was no reason to deliberately ruin a good thing. Of course, with Li Hongyuan personally watching, Jingwan usually focused on painting for no more than half an hour at a time. But when she rested, it usually exceeded 2 hours. In addition, the flowers and plants in the residence also attracted a lot of Jingwan's attention. The days basically passed like this. It was inevitable that during this period, some indescribable things would definitely happen. In the blink of an eye, the diplomatic mission of the former Wei arrived in the capital of Qi Yuan. The momentum was quite vast. It could be said that almost the entire capital was alarmed. Of course, it was impossible for everyone to run over to watch. Even so, it was enough to make Lu Chengdi and many officials' faces turn black. As an envoy, how could they be so arrogant in other people's territory? How could they be good? However, the purpose of the former way was like this. The darker your face and the more unhappy you were, the happier they would be. To put it bluntly, it was a demonstration. If that was all, it would be fine. Unexpectedly, half of the entourage served the princess. Not to mention the imperial guards on both sides of the entourage, there were many carriages inside. The carriage in front was not normal. It was only made with a section of railing carved with lacquered gold. The top of the railing was round, and the surrounding gauze curtains were scattered. It was not completely fixed. When the wind blew, the gauze curtains fluttered. It was originally hazy, but after the gauze curtains fluttered, the figure of the woman inside became clearer. Her clothes were not the usual clothes. From head to toe, simple but extremely elegant patterns were embroidered with gold threads. At the same time, there were many small pearls and gemstones. Her face was covered with a veil, and only a pair of eyes could be seen. Those eyes were very lively and unforgettable, as if they could speak. The carriages behind her were also covered with a particularly fresh cloth, as if they were afraid that people would not know that those things belonged to a woman. There were also groups of beautiful maids walking leisurely on both sides of the carriage. Why did the former Wei dynasty raise a woman to such a high position? However, because the other side had more than one member of the royal family, Lu Qingdi also sent one more person. In addition to Li Hongming, the 10th Marquis also accompanied. However, everything had a priority. In this battle, the former Wei was led by their eldest prince, while the latter was led by Li Hongming. They exchanged pleasantries, probed, and feigned civility with each other. It could be said that it was quite exciting. It was the first time they had met, but both of them felt like they had met their match. Unexpectedly, their smiles became more and more sincere. Previously, the Grand Prince of Wei had proposed to pay a visit to Emperor Lu Chengdi and had fulfilled the etiquette. Li Hongming had also said that the envoys were fatigued from the long journey and were covered in dust. It wouldn't be too late to meet them after a short rest. One side insisted on meeting. The other side insisted on not meeting. The situation seemed to be in a stalemate. Eldest imperial brother. The woman's voice was as pleasant as an oriole's. She walked over leisurely with several maids. Her clothes were very soft. When the wind blew gently, the hem of her skirt swayed in a large arc. She did not feel frivolous. Instead, she felt like a floating immortal. "What's wrong?" The former Wei eldest prince chuckled and did not answer. Instead, he introduced them. "This is the third prince of Qi Yuan. He has been conferred the title of Prince Rue. This is my sister, the Empress's legitimate princess. Her title is Yi Ning. Greetings to Prince Rue." He squatted. Her eyes were full of ripples and seemed to be smiling. Li Hongming's heart flashed with a strange color, but he did not show it on his face. Princess Yi Ning is too polite. The smile on his face was not more or less. He was very elegant and gentlemanly. In my opinion, the eldest prince does not need to refuse. We men do not care, but the princess has always been delicate. It is better for her to rest for a night. Imperial father is a benevolent and virtuous ruler. He will not think that the Wei messengers are rude. The former Wei never recognized this title given by outsiders. They all considered themselves as the Wei. When they gave some face, they would call them as they wished. Princess Yi Ning's eyes seemed to be a little confused and a little helpless. The former Wei eldest prince still wanted to say something. "In my opinion, it is settled. The post house has been tidied up. If there is anything inappropriate, just say it." Li Hongming took the initiative in a timely manner. In that case, it is better to accept deferentially than to decline courteously. He did not know whether it was because of Princess Yi Ning or because he felt that it was meaningless to continue. After all, they were in someone else's territory. The former Wei eldest prince compromised and took a step back. In this way everyone was happy. Li Hongming did not continue to follow them. He let the people of the Honglu temple entertain them, and went to the palace to report to Lu Chengdi. After the former Wei messengers entered the capital and arrived at the post house, Lu Chengdi already knew what happened. What he wanted to know now was how Li Hongming felt after the initial negotiations with the messengers. Li Hongming only used 4 words to summarize. They did not come with good intentions. Moreover, Li Hongming did not see the other prince from beginning to end. The former Wei eldest prince only said that his younger brother was naughty and mischievous, and did not say anything else. However, there was one thing that could be confirmed. That prince had definitely followed the envoy group of the former Wei into Qiyuan city. It was just that he didn't know where he had been thrown to. Obviously, it was either another person who didn't play by the rules, or it was done on purpose. He wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to investigate the situation in Qiyuan city. It was not that the Qi Yuan did not expect this to happen. However, they did not expect that the other prince would do this in person. Since they did not keep an eye on him from the beginning, it would be very difficult to find him now. Especially if the other party deliberately hid his whereabouts and acted alone, then it would be impossible to find him in a short time. After all, the former Wei and Qi Yuan's cultural heritage were basically the same. If they randomly found an inconspicuous piece of clothing and the capital was so big, it would be like looking for a needle in a haystack. It would be extremely difficult to find a person. Lu Qingdi and the others were in a dilemma. Although the former Wei prince could not find anything special in the capital, even if he asked around, after all, the real secrets would not be spread among the people. He could not enter a place that was not among the people and would not be able to find out anything. It seemed that there was nothing to worry about. However, that was not the case. After all, that was a prince of another country. If something happened to him in Qi Yuan's capital, it would lead to a diplomatic problem between the two countries. Therefore, people who didn't play by the rules were hated no matter where they went. Even so, they had to find him as soon as possible. Lu Chengdi rubbed his forehead and passed down the order to the city guards to find him. How could they find him if they did not know him? Not to mention Lu Chengdi, many court officials sneered. Looking for him was just for show. If something really happened, as long as he did not die, he deserved it. Who asked him to run around? There was something wrong with the Qi Yuan people's character. How could they bully outsiders? Truly sorry, Qiyuan had always been a country of etiquette. Under normal circumstances they were warm and hospitable, but if someone provoked them first, the people of Qiyuan were also not pushovers, and could be pinched as they pleased. Therefore, if something really happened, it was your own problem. As for the prince of the former Wei, he was indeed strolling around the capital. Compared to what he had expected, he was much more high profile. He had 4 guards with him, and he himself was also quite eye-catching. His height was basically comparable to Li Hongyuan's. He had a pair of long legs and his eyes were slightly blue. It was obvious that he had the blood of a different race in his body. Comparatively speaking, Qiyuan capital was already very cold. 2 or 3 layers of clothes were considered normal. Those who had slightly weaker physiques were already wearing thin cotton clothes. However, this prince was clearly wearing a piece of clothing. The waist was tight, the collar was wide open, and a large area of strong chest muscles could be seen. Moreover, his entire person was filled with a kind of feeling of strength from head to toe. He did not feel cold at all. In addition to his good looks, he was naturally very eye-catching. Apparently, he was used to the feeling of being in the limelight. He did not feel uncomfortable at all as he walked. When he saw someone selling fruits, he took them and left. It was obvious that he was not an ordinary person. The peddler was afraid and wanted money again and again. After all, it was not easy for people like him to make a living. At this moment, the guard behind him threw a silver tael over. The peddler hurriedly caught the silver tael. It was obvious that the silver tael was worth at least 2 taels. To be honest, even if he sold all the fruits in his stall, It would not cost so much money. He was an honest person. He said bluntly that he could not give the silver tael. The guard sneered and looked at him with disdain. You don't have to give the silver tael. It's your reward. Then he followed his master and continued walking. Generally speaking, being able to sell it for money was naturally something to be happy about. However, the other party's attitude was as if the money was not for people, but for bugs. That was an extreme insult to people. The peddler was also an upright person and was doing his part to earn money. One had to know that fruits were not easy to obtain in such weather. He had also put in a lot of effort to get these fruits. He also had a conscience and did not sell them for a particularly high price. Now that he was holding this piece of silver, his eyes turned red with anger. However, it was still a silver tael. He could not just throw it away. The peddler stood there for a while. The person next to him should be an acquaintance who understood his temper. He wanted to persuade him to let it go and not make things difficult for the silver tael. The peddler decisively asked someone to help him look after his stall, and then went to the nearest bank. It was not a big bank and it was not targeted at the upper class. Occasionally, the commoners would go to exchange money, and they would be received politely. The peddler went in and asked to exchange the silver tael for copper coins. 1 tael for 1,000 copper coins. This was the normal way of exchange. However, when it came to the bank, 1 tael of silver was exchanged for 1,000 copper coins. If you wanted to exchange copper coins for silver, you would need at least 1,100 copper coins to exchange for 1 tael of silver. It was exactly 2 taels of silver in exchange for 2,000 copper coins. What went in was a small piece, but what came out was a big bag. The peddler returned to his stall and only took the few copper coins that he deserved. He wrapped up the rest and asked someone to help him look after it. It seemed that he was going to return the money. However, originally, he only needed to twist the silver tael and exchange it for 5 copper coins. It was more than enough and convenient to carry around. Now that he had changed it all, he was angry as expected. Another person took a fruit from the stall. Of course, the other party threw down a few copper coins. As he chewed on the fruit, he said, "You want to return the money? Give it to me, I'll help you." All right, stop looking at me suspiciously. Even if I don't have money, I won't take this little bit of money from you. I just don't like some people. As he spoke, he pulled a person over. "He's my family's guard. I'll give him to you. When I return the money, I'll come back to get him." The fruit had already been finished. He threw away the core in his hand, grabbed the bag of money, and quickly went in the direction that a certain prince had left. Since he was so ostentatious, he was not afraid that he would not be able to find him. "Young master, wait." One of the guards who followed him was asked to leave, and the others followed him. The peddler was also shocked by this development. This. The guard who was left behind was much calmer. "It's fine. Continue to sell your things. I guarantee that this matter has nothing to do with you. You guys. Our young master is from General He's residence. He's from the Northeast Army. I don't know if you know." I know. The peddler hurriedly nodded. He was even a little excited. Although the Northeast Army was not particularly famous, this peddler happened to have a biological brother in the Northeast Army. Therefore, he knew more about the Northeast Army than the average person. When he heard that he was General He's young master, his feelings naturally rose. The entire He family was stationed in the northeast of Chi-Yuan. This year, General He brought his family back to the capital. When he left, he only took one son with him. In the entire capital, this was considered a big matter. There were quite a lot of people who knew about it. The peddler stretched his head to look at He Hai's consciousness, but the other party had already disappeared. The guard's expression of reverence towards the peddler twitched. If he knew what kind of nature their young master had, he probably would not be like this. Even if he did not hide, he would not be too far off from Gue Jianchou. "That, brother, you should hurry and follow them. The other party is not to be trifled with. If there's a conflict, what if the young master suffers? It's fine. The young master won't suffer. However, when he thought about it, the other party's guard carried a knife with him. The style of the knife was different from the ones in Qiyuan. It was impossible for them not to know that the young master did not care about the outside world and only wanted to find someone to fight. Especially when the He family's women and children would be living in the capital in the future. If they wanted to gain a foothold in the capital, they naturally had to have a thorough understanding of the capital's affairs. Otherwise, if they fell, they would not know which immortal they had bumped into. Therefore, the old madam and madam had repeatedly warned them to pay attention to whatever happened recently. In Qiyuan, if one saw a guard who could carry a blade, they would definitely be part of the imperial family, and the type with a very high status. There was no need to talk about those in the imperial palace. Outside, it would definitely be the various imperial residences. However, those who did not belong to Qiyuan, but had similar treatment, their identities were very easy to guess. To be honest, these former military men would naturally hold reverence towards the people of their own country's royal family. But for the people of other countries, it was not the same. As long as you were the one who stirred up trouble first, then sorry, no matter if you were a prince or a prince, they would dare to beat you up first. Not to mention the former way, they were definitely the arch-enemy of Qiyuan. Therefore, even if they knew that their young master might go against the other party, they did not have the intention to stop it. He Hai's consciousness was a tyrant in the northeastern border town. However, he was selective about who he wanted to bully. He would not bully ordinary people. According to him, it was meaningless to bully those who could not fight back. It would be satisfying if both parties could fight. Therefore, it was one thing for He Hai to dislike the people of the former way. More importantly, he was itching for a fight. In his opinion, that person just now might be a good opponent. If He Hai had the opportunity to fight with Li Hongyuan, he should not be itching for a fight. However, these few days, the gates of Jin Qin Wang Fu were closed to him. During this period of time, Jin Qin Wang did not want to pay attention to him. He even became a little bored. Grandmother and his mother repeatedly warned him not to cause trouble. Only God knew how boring it was for him to bring people out for a stroll. Finally, he encountered a problem, and it was the kind that he had a reason to look for. How could he let it go? The He family's creed was not to take the initiative to cause trouble. Their duty was to protect the country, and bullying the weak was something they could not do. However, if someone bullied them, the He family would definitely not be afraid. When facing their enemies, they would definitely not show any mercy. He Hai may not know about the matter of the former Wei entering the capital of Qiyuan, but he had an absolute understanding of weapons. He may not be able to distinguish the other things, but based on that blade, he knew that these people were from the former Wei. The peddler was weak and was one of their own. He was bullied by the enemy. As a He family member, what else could he say? Fight back. He Hai, who was itching for a fight, was simply too self-confident. Even if the peddler went to exchange for money, that group of people did not go too far. He Hai casually asked and quickly chased after them. He Hai directly stepped forward to block the way with an arrogant look. I say, brother, a fruit does not cost that much money. You think you have a lot of money, but we Qiyuan are more particular about how much money we have. Therefore, this young master will work a little harder and send the money back to you. That former Wei prince's bodyguard saw that something was wrong and immediately pulled out the blade at his waist. He Hai didn't take it seriously and even smiled with a little excitement. When that imperial prince saw He Hai's expression, he knew that this person was not the same as ordinary people. His fear of death was not simple. Therefore, he reached out to stop his bodyguard. This little bit of money, this imperial prince really does not care about it. That peddler did not have it easy to buy these fruits. I will reward him. That will not do. Everyone in Qiyuan may be poor, but they are ambitious. Here, take it. He Hai raised his hand and threw the cloth bag over. Although the cloth bag was tied tightly, the rope that connected the copper coins had been broken by He Hai. When he threw it, the other party subconsciously blocked it. Almost 2,000 copper coins fell out. Although it was not enough to hurt anyone, the scene was exciting enough. He frowned. Even if you are Imperial Prince, no matter how much money you have, you should not waste it like this. Could it be that your old man did not teach you that as a member of the Imperial family, you should be diligent and thrifty and be an example to the world? Doing this, not only will you damage your own virtue, you will also implicate your own country. As he said this, he shook his head and sighed. The former Wei prince was so angry that he laughed. In the former Wei, he was also arrogant and despotic. If he wanted wind, he would get wind. If he wanted rain, he would get rain. He was a person who was exceptionally favored. He was the type who would argue with the heavens, the earth, and his brothers. Of course, he was still too far away from Li Hongyuan. At least, he did not dare to argue with his old man. Fortunately, he had never encountered a situation like today. Deliberately looking for trouble. Little Yi, I only do what I think should be done. Humiliating my Qi Yuan's people. It is my duty to seek justice for them. If you think this is looking for trouble, then it is. Little Tyrant, he actually had a time when he spoke such high-sounding words. Was this a talent that he originally knew? In the past, there was no need for him to speak, so he did not speak. Or was it the result of Jin Qinhuang's teaching? It was debatable. Since that was the case, then what else was there to say? Just directly fight. In any case, both of them were masters who used their fists to solve problems. In that instant, it was as if the heavenly lightning had ignited the earthly fire. All of a sudden there was an explosion. Since the masters had already started to fight, there was no need to say anything about the people below. Naturally, they also started to fight. However, it was 4 against 3, a knife against a fist. Because He Jihai's people were all military men, they had seen blood and been stained with life, so they naturally fought valiantly. Even if they were short of weapons, they would not be at a disadvantage for a while. However, they stayed in the He family as guards because their bodies were injured. After a long time, they would definitely not be able to hold on. However, at this moment they simply did not care. When the former Wei prince fought in his own territory, he had never lost. Of course, he did not rule out the fact that others did not dare to fight with him. However, he also admitted that he was really strong. However, He Jihai was stronger than him. Moreover, when facing the Qin Wang of Qi Yuan, his own father and brothers, he would not show any mercy. Now he was even more impolite. Moreover, he did not know if it was because he had been hung up and beaten by Qin Wang during this period of time. But He Jihai, who had never been interested in hanging up and beating others, was very excited at this time. Turned out that abusing people would be very, very refreshing. Thus, his actions became even more ruthless. The former Wei prince probably did not expect this situation. Even if his strength was not good enough, the other party should have shown mercy. He had just entered the capital of Qi Yuan and dared to beat him to death. Was he not afraid of causing a dispute between the two countries? Therefore, he could only consider himself unlucky to have met a lunatic like He Jihai. He Jihai's 4th guard arrived late and saw the scene of real fire. Speaking of which, he was a very rational person. With a young master like He Jihai, if there was no rational person to suppress the situation, who knew what would happen? If they continued to fight, it might not be fatal. However, the other party's status was honorable. Although his young master was the son of a general, he himself was a commoner. There was a great disparity in status. No matter who was right or wrong in the end, his young master would definitely suffer. Therefore, he needed someone to suppress the situation and protect his young master. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6654172. HTML chapter error. Click here to report. No registration required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bicken.com. Com Bicken. Com Mobile Edition Reading Website. M. Bicken. M. Chapter 392. The He family guards rushed towards Jin Qin Wang Fu at the fastest speed, not because they were worried that the battle would get bigger and bigger, but because they fought so fiercely, it would definitely attract the city guards. If they were caught by the city guards, it would be fine if they didn't resist. At most, they would suffer some physical pain, and in the end, they would definitely be able to fish them out. But according to his understanding of the young master, the possibility was very small. Because he had been caught so many times in the past, it had already become an instinctive action, subconsciously counterattacking. This counterattack was definitely going to cause trouble. Therefore, it was best to fish the young master out before he was taken away. Horses couldn't be ridden in the city, and they didn't even bring a horse out, so they could only rely on their 2 legs. Running too fiercely affected their old injuries, but that pain could be said that they were already used to it. It affected their movements, but it couldn't stop them from moving forward at such a fast speed. In front of Jin Qin Wang Fu's main gate, they supported their knees and gasped for breath. There was a piercing pain in their bones, but they couldn't care so much. In 2 or 3 steps forward, they quickly explained the sequence of events to the guards of Jin Qin Wang Fu, begging Jin Qin Wang to extend a helping hand and save their young master. Several guards looked at each other in dismay, but they still quickly reported the matter. Although the He family's young master was beaten by Wang Ye every time he came, in fact, He Ji Hai was still a relatively special existence to the other people of Jin Qin Wang Fu. At least, don't look at how Wang Ye beat people fiercely. In fact, he was still considered to be fond of him. Other Wang Ye didn't have this kind of honor. Li Hongyuan was currently helping Jingwan prepare the paint. It seemed that he was in a leisurely mood. Hearing this matter in a flash, they knew who He Ji Hai was up against. Speaking of which, in the previous life, although they didn't arrive together with a letter of credence, there was still the matter of a certain prince sneaking away. Although it wasn't like this time, he didn't run away immediately, but it still made people turn the sky upside down. In essence, the matter wasn't that exaggerated, it was just that they went in the wrong direction. They all thought that if the other party wanted to inquire about something, they would definitely go to a bustling place where it was easy to get close to the high officials or their family members. In reality, it was all like that. They ran to an area where the common people were more concentrated. In this life, it still didn't change, but they bumped into He Ji Hai, who wasn't in the capital in the previous life. The 2 people's temperaments were fundamentally different, but on the surface they were a bit similar. In the end, they directly fought. In that case, there was no need to waste time looking for him. No matter what, He Ji Hai was one of his people. He could train him however he wanted, but the other party was an enemy. Moreover, he was one of the killing generals of the former way. He was vicious and merciless, a super butcher who killed, robbed, and burned everything. No matter if it was a soldier or a commoner, they all met an abnormal end. Of course, that was a matter of several years later. In his previous life, many of Li Hongyuan's generals had died in his hands. However, at that time, He Shi's reputation as the god of war had already spread. The other party was not afraid of anyone except He Shi. Every time they would avoid him. However, in the end, Li Hongyuan still set a trap for He Shi to kill them and hang them on the city wall to dry them up. This was to comfort the souls of the Qi Yuan soldiers in heaven. In his previous life, the other party had lost his life the first time they met. In this life, the 2 of them had fought the first time they met. It was really fate. Even so, Li Hongyuan did not want to kill this person. In this life, he would be more useful. Li Hongyuan's face was calm, but his hands did not stop moving. Let an E go and bring him back. He unhurriedly mixed the colors that Jingwan needed and put down the brush. If I don't take the initiative to look for trouble, trouble will come knocking on my door. Wan, your husband has a hard life. Jingwan was now painting seriously. She had only heard about He Shi's matter. She was already used to a certain someone's occasional self-reproach. When Jingwan was free, She would accompany him as a form of entertainment. Now that she was busy, the more you paid attention to him, the more he would probably go on and on. But Li Hongyuan did not really want to disturb Jingwen. He washed his hands and slowly wiped them dry. "I'll go and take care of this matter. Go. Jingwen's tone and expression seemed to carry a bit of disdain. Li Hongyuan did not go crazy this time. Before he left, he impolitely hugged Jingwen and kissed her twice, causing Jingwen to almost scratch the paper. In the end, Jingwen was so angry that she slapped him. Therefore, the living king of hell also understood the essence of, if the mountain doesn't come to me, then I'll go to the mountain. Li Hongyuan left the study and asked someone to call the He family's guards over. Because of the pain and because the people of Jin Qin Wang Fu had stopped him, he did not return. Li Hongyuan needed to know the cause and effect of the matter from his mouth. Only then could he decide how to deal with this matter. After listening, this matter was no longer a big deal. Under this kind of situation, Qi Yuan and the former Wei seemed to be on good terms. But in reality, if they really encountered something, even the most pedantic, the most moderate, the most courteous, the group of people who always clamored that things could not be resolved by force, could not help but roll up their sleeves. The former Wei. Screw them to death. Let's ask a country that was eyeing their own country covetously, and had always claimed that they were loyal and prepared to dedicate their lives to it. This land originally belonged to the former Wei. Qi Yuan was a thief. No one would be able to tolerate this, all right. As long as they firmly pinned all the mistakes on the other party's head, then as long as they were not dead, the pedantic old men could use their mouths to flip the other party. No matter how capable your entire envoy group was, what were the odds of winning in a war of words? There were not many people who could debate with a group of scholars. Even if the other party had it, it did not mean that Qi Yuan did not have it. Therefore, the final result was probably what Lu Qingdi and the others thought at the beginning. Serves them right, they were unlucky. In fact, He Zhihai was considered lucky. If it was any other country, even if it was just a small country, He Zhihai would have to pay a heavy price. Of course, the premise was that Li Hongyuan did not help him. If the living king of hell helped him, no matter who he was, he would have to retreat. The people who were beaten up did not care who they were. At most, they would have to pay some compensation. Could it be that they would really start a war just because of this? If they really did that, it could only mean that someone had wanted to fight for a long time. In this case, they could not blame He Zhihai. Even if they did not have him as an excuse, there would be other excuses. Anyway, it would not drag on for long. Originally, the city defense team should have arrived faster than an E. However, they ran to other places to recruit people and hurried over. They were almost at the same time as an E. In the eyes of this former Wei imperial prince, knowing his identity and still daring to make a move without restraint, there was an 80 to 90% chance that the other party had the same identity as him. It was just that he had a rough understanding of the various princes of Qi Yuan, so he was unable to make the connection for a moment. However, when the city guards arrived and discovered that the other party was actually only He Zhenwei's son, and the one without any rank at all, they almost vomited blood. Don't ask him why he knew He Zhenwei. The former Wei was in the north of Qi Yuan. In the east, there were the territories of the alliance of tribes that needed He Zhenwei to guard. After the former Wei stabilized its current territory, its main focus was on Qi Yuan. Therefore, it had a lot of contacts with that alliance. Naturally, it paid special attention to things related to Qi Yuan. He Zhenwei had 3 sons now. The eldest and the fourth had become generals with different ranks. Only the youngest son, who was the most dauntless, had no rank. The former prince of Wei wanted to kill someone, but he was beaten a little miserably by He Zhihai, who was too excited. Later, he even used his guard's knife. When he wanted the knife, He Zhihai snatched it. Qi Yuan must give me an explanation for this matter. Otherwise, the Great Wei dynasty will not let this matter go. His face was full of ruthlessness. Although he was injured all over and was in so much pain that he could not stand up, he still did not change his nature and spoke ruthlessly. The leader of the city defense team also felt that he was unlucky. Why did he have to encounter this matter? However, he did not have the ability to deal with this matter. After thinking for a while, he decided to take young Master He back and let the higher-ups deal with it. He waved his hand. Take young Master He away. As expected, He Jihai subconsciously wanted to make a move. However, an E had already arrived. These two words stopped He Jihai. An E walked forward and did not look at the former Prince of Wei. He only looked at the city defense team. Master asked me to take him back. As for an E, the others didn't know his name, but he was the leader of the bodyguards at Jin Qinhuang's side. Not every one of them wanted to know him, but they still needed to know him, in order to better protect their own and their subordinates' small lives. Therefore, when an E spoke, the other party agreed without a second word and was quite respectful. Thus, an E took He Jihai and the other 3 guards of the He family away. The former Prince of Wei was unable to restrain his anger. He dragged his unsteady body and wanted to stop them, but he was blocked by the city defense team. You Qi Yuan people really have big guts. You dare not put this prince in your eyes. This matter is not over. The leader of the city defense team lowered his eyes. Prince of Wei, if you have any dissatisfaction, you can speak frankly to His Majesty. The people who took him away are our Jin Qinhuang's people. Hearing this, the former Prince of Wei paused. In fact, Li Hongyuan could be considered as the person they focused on before coming here. Because he was a bit special according to their analysis, if they had a conflict with this Jin Qinhuang, they would be the ones to suffer in the end. However, wasn't it said that Li Hongyuan was not close to any of the court officials and had no contact? What was this now? He was openly protecting the son of a military general, and his brother was also indifferent. You're Jin Qinhuang. Do you think this prince is easy to fool? Could it be that you think that De Wei doesn't know anything about your Qi Yuan situation? The leader of the city defense team immediately understood what he meant and pulled up the corner of his mouth. There is another reason for this matter. He Gongzi has caught the eye of Jin Qinhuang. The whole capital knows about it. As for the specific situation, it is not something insignificant people like us know. If Prince of Wei has any questions, you can directly ask His Majesty. We are under orders to find Prince. Now we ask Prince to allow us to send you back to the post house. It was more important to quickly send the person back to complete the task. No matter how the people above fought, it was better for them to hide as far away as possible. Our prince has just entered the capital of Qi Yuan and was injured to this extent. You lowly people like you can send him back just like that. The guard was very unyielding. So, Prince of Wei doesn't want to return to the post house. People from other countries would be more respectful and courteous, but the former Wei If your emperor didn't come in person, then Prince of Wei can wait. Let's go. The leader waved his hand and left with his men. It was quite straightforward. The former Prince of Wei and the other guards who were also injured were dumbfounded for a moment. They were left behind just like that. What followed was a monstrous anger. Not to mention this prince, even his guards. Because their master was in power, their fowls and dogs rose to the sky. Like master, like subordinates. They were the best example. In the former Wei, they were used to being arrogant and were like crabs. Moreover, they were flattered and flattered by others. When had they ever suffered such a loss and suffered such humiliation? At this moment, not to mention the people involved, even the entire capital of Qi Yuan, and even the entire Qi Yuan, everyone wanted to get rid of them as soon as possible. It had to be said that after this incident, the bloodthirsty nature in the former Prince of Wei's heart could be said to have awakened a considerable part. However, it was useless to say these things now. They couldn't possibly continue to stay here in this state, right? Especially the Prince of Wei. The pain in his chest and abdomen did not lessen at all. It was very likely that his lungs were injured. If not treated in time, there might be sequelae. However, when they entered the capital, they sneaked out. They didn't know the layout of the capital of Qi Yuan. Even if they wanted to go to the courier station, they didn't know which direction it was. Moreover, the former Prince of Wei and the first prince were not in the same faction. If they went back in such a sorry state, They might be ridiculed. Not to mention other things, the former Prince of Wei was an extremely prideful person. The more he thought about it, the more furious he became. He was so angry that he coughed twice and spat out a mouthful of blood. The guards were naturally shocked. They looked like they couldn't take it anymore. Only one of them had to carry him. Their lives were in danger. How could they care about their pride? However, just as they were about to find someone to ask, they looked up. The originally lively market was now completely empty. All kinds of things were scattered everywhere. Some of the shops had even completely closed their doors. There was an inexplicable sense of desolation. An indescribable feeling grew in their hearts. It was as if they had been abandoned by the whole world. Time waits for no man. They didn't have the time to be sad. There was no one here, but there must be people in other places. They had to leave first. Break the doors of the shops. Their minds were a little clearer now. They didn't forget how today's incident happened. However, they didn't know that in fact, not all the people of the city defense team had left. The small team leader left a lot of people behind to quietly watch and not do anything. It wasn't that no one asked whether this was bad or not. The small team leader only said, "They are people of the former way." This completely dispelled their unnecessary thoughts. In these years, the former Wei and Qi Yuan were more peaceful. However, when the Qi Yuan was first established, they had fought many wars with the former Wei. Both sides had their wins and losses. No one knew how many people had died and how much money had been spent. The hatred between the two countries could be said to be well known. The people of the former Wei originally wanted to stay away. Those who didn't see the scene just now would always be able to meet people. However, they didn't expect that even when they left the market, people who saw them would quickly avoid them as if they were the plague. They couldn't understand this. They even thought that it was done deliberately. In fact, it was completely understandable. Think about it, they were just ordinary people. How could they not hide when they saw a few people who were armed, injured, and full of murderous aura? One must know that this kind of trouble could affect one's life and even implicate one's family. It would be strange if they didn't run away when they saw it. Seeing them like this, the people of the city guard team watched from afar. No matter who was right or wrong, they only had one thought. They deserved it. Originally, when they were in the territory of their mortal enemies, they should hide carefully. If they went out and were recognized, they might arouse the hatred of others. Then they might be put in gunny sacks somewhere. However, they thought that they were infallible and didn't have the slightest self-awareness. Not to mention that they sneaked out and caused trouble for others. Now that they were in this situation, they deserved it. However, after all, it was not good to kill people. They couldn't really ignore it. Therefore, the small team leader had quickly reported this matter. Naturally, no one dared to hide such a thing. Therefore, the speed of the upload was very fast. It didn't take long for it to reach the top. Naturally, Lu Chengdi was still discussing with several ministers and his sons. After hearing it, they all fell silent. However, they couldn't help but feel a surge of joy in their hearts. They deserved it. Even a troublesome evil creature could do something good. However, after all, they were in high positions and couldn't be easily swayed by their emotions. Therefore, at least they didn't show it on their faces. Third son, go again and send Prince Wei back to the courier station. Also, understand the ins and outs of this matter clearly. If it is my Qi Yuan's fault, I will give an explanation to the former Wei. But if... The unfinished words couldn't be more obvious. If Prince Wei was wrong first, not only would he be beaten in vain, but he would also have to ask for an explanation from the former Wei. Yes, I will do as you say. However, father, young Master He and his guards have been taken away by sixth brother. If we want to understand the situation, we must find young Master He. Should we bring them out from sixth brother's place or... Go and ask your sixth brother. If he wants to release them, bring them back. I will ask him personally. If he doesn't release them, just understand the situation clearly. Li Hongming answered, but he felt very uncomfortable in his heart. They were both his sons, But Lu Chengdi treated Li Hongyuan as his son and indulged him in everything. There was no need to ask Li Hongyuan's opinion on this matter. Wasn't it natural for him to want to release them? If his brothers tried to ask someone else, not to mention asking, they would directly send the imperial guards to the prince's mansion to ask for them. They would be done for if they dared to say one more word. This was a normal situation. It was really abnormal for Li Hongyuan to do this. The other princes' thoughts should be similar, but they could only keep their mouths shut. The court officials looked down and were happy to see insiders like Ruan Ruizhong and Luo Peishan. As for the others, they had long been used to it. Anyway, they couldn't control what Lu Chengdi wanted to do before he came to power. What did scheming have to do with them? In this way, Li Hongming quickly brought people to pick them up. Two groups of people led the way while he trotted on his horse. At the moment when he saw them, Li Hongming felt a little strange. It seemed a little too miserable, but to be honest, he was quite happy in his heart. When the people of the former way saw Li Hongming, they almost had the urge to cry. Li Hongming sat on the horse and didn't get down. This prince is ordered by my father to send Prince Wei to the courier station. Out of etiquette and also out of morality, they should have given the horse to Prince Wei. However, that would mean that Li Hongming would have to walk on his own. He did not think that the other party had such a big face. Furthermore, he was very clear that some people just like to take advantage of others. If you were polite now, the other party might think that you were in the wrong, and might even become arrogant. Since it was Qiyuan who was suppressing the former way now, then it was necessary to suppress to the end. These people gritted their teeth, but they had no choice. The previous people dared to do that, not to mention this prince. Who asked them to be weak? They could only remain silent. Li Hongming said that he would send them back, so he would send them back. He didn't have the slightest intention to help. He had no choice. He also had to avoid arousing suspicion. If something happened to Prince Wei, what would he do if it was blamed on him? Therefore, it was better for the guards to work harder. Therefore, even if there were people coming to pick them up, other than not taking detours, there was no change. Could even be said that it was worse. Being surrounded by a group of people dressed in bright and beautiful clothes, they might even look down on them and laugh at them. Prince Wei's chest rose and fell more and more obviously. Then he gasped in pain. As a result, he could only suppress his anger and close his eyes. Out of sight, out of mind. However, today's matter taught Prince Wei a good lesson. His desire for power became more and more obvious, so that in the future, when they approached the courier station, the former Wei crown prince had already received the news and came to the door to welcome them. When he saw this scene, he felt very strange. Most of them were happy like the people of Qiyuan. His brother was ranked 5th. Although he wasn't the legitimate son of the empress, he was really loyal to the crown prince. His birth mother was the empress's stepsister and was one of the 4 concubines. In the palace they should be enemies. However, concubine Xian's birth mother was from a different tribe, and his brother had inherited different pupils. When the former Wei expanded to the north, in order to have a sufficient population, they gathered many people from different tribes. After hundreds of years of integration and education, the absolute rulers were still the people who continued from the Wei dynasty. Therefore, even if the prince had the blood of a different tribe and had obvious characteristics, no matter how favored he was, he would definitely have no fate with the throne. In this respect, he was inferior to the child of a palace maid who was purely from the Wei dynasty. Of course, because too much time had passed, and the bloodline had weakened after several generations or even dozens of generations of marriages, it was usually difficult to trace. However, this prince's characteristics were too obvious. If one traced back, it would be easy to find out that he was from a different tribe. It was a tragedy. However, the 5th prince of Wei and his mother were very clear about their status. They stuck close to the empress and the crown prince. People like them were simply natural allies to the empress and the crown prince. When people like them worked together, they had an absolute advantage in both the imperial court and the imperial harem. Therefore, it seemed that the former Wei had fewer internal disputes than Qi Yuan. As for the fifth prince of Wei, even if he had different pupils, he should have been the one who was ostracized and despised among the princes. However, he relied on his powerful backing and ran amok. Even the eldest prince had to avoid him. How unbridled and insolent was he in his own country. Now he was beaten to such a state. How could he not be happy? However, they were in Qi Yuan after all. No matter what happened internally, their position would always be the same. Therefore, the crown prince of the former Wei frowned and quickly stepped forward. Fifth brother, what happened? How did you get hurt so badly? Although they did not get along well in the country, the crown prince had his own ambitions. His mother was consort Da, and he was the eldest son. His family was also very powerful. Therefore, how could he give up the throne so easily? Naturally, there were many open and covert struggles. As the fifth prince's guards, they were naturally very clear about this. However, they also understood the current situation. It should be known that the crown prince was in charge of this diplomatic mission to Qi Yuan. Therefore, the crown prince had to come forward to deal with the fifth prince's injuries. Therefore, they were filled with righteous indignation. They inverted right and wrong, added fuel to the fire, and described all kinds of evil deeds of the people in Qi Yuan. Li Hongming listened from the side and did not interfere. He just listened quietly and did not even get angry. Usually, this tactic would only work when both sides were evenly matched. However, this was Qi Yuan's home ground. Qi Yuan had the absolute advantage. You can't just say whatever you want. Not to mention that it was not the truth. Even if it was the truth, Qi Yuan had the right to distort the truth. Therefore, if you want to say something, just say it. If you want to say something, just say it. You're just wasting your breath. If you're indignant, you're just asking for trouble. Why bother? The crown prince of the former Wei was obviously very angry after hearing this. However, he tried his best to suppress his anger. Shouldn't Prince Rui give us an explanation? Li Hongming chuckled. We will naturally find out what happened. Our Qi Yuan is a country of etiquette. We abide by the rules and are reasonable. We won't easily accuse others, so naturally, we won't be falsely accused. Father has already said that he will personally investigate the matter. However, in my opinion, isn't your younger brother's injury the most important thing right now? You should know that even if it's a minor injury, if not treated in time, it could become a serious injury or even life-threatening. The crown prince of the former Wei's expression changed slightly. Although he was the leader, most of the people accompanying him were not his people. This kind of instigation would make people think that he was deliberately stalling for time and ignoring his fifth brother's injury. Then, this trip would definitely not go smoothly. When he returned to the country, those people would have an excuse to attack him. Prince Ru, don't disappoint us. Hurry up and send my fifth brother in. Let the imperial physician examine him. He ignored some people's doubtful gazes. Li Hongming followed him in. On the surface, the crown prince of the former Wei's internal disputes were not as fierce as Qi Yuan. However, as long as they were not from the same faction, this kind of well-known instigation was also very effective. Moreover, it could be said that the results were immediate. The crown prince of the former Wei had brought 3 imperial physicians with him. However, because of the long journey, the oldest one had fallen ill. Now, there were only 2 imperial physicians in front of the crown prince of the former Wei. Both of them were not very good at treating this kind of injury, so they did not dare to be careless. Li Hongming stood to the side. Do you want me to call 2 of them who are good at treating injuries to take a look? As the saying goes, brainstorming is beneficial. It should be more helpful for your younger brother. The crown prince of the former Wei subconsciously wanted to refuse, but another important official hurriedly said, "Thank you, Your Highness." A strange look flashed across the crown prince of the former Wei's eyes, but he did not say anything. Who wants their imperial physicians? Cram. The crown prince of the former Wei seemed to have regained his confidence. Your Highness, you must not let your emotions affect your decisions. Your injury is more important. The official took 2 steps forward and pressed the Crown Prince's hand in a place where no one else could see. The Crown Prince of the former Wei remembered his mother and his brother the Crown Prince's instructions before he left. He must not act as he pleased and must listen to the right assistant minister of the Ministry of Personnel. He thought about how he had suffered such a big loss in such a short time after leaving without permission. In the end, he restrained himself and did not speak again. Since that is the case, I will immediately send someone to call for them, Li Hongming said as he turned around and gave a few orders. Thank you, Your Highness. The Crown Prince of the former Wei clasped his hands in salute. You are welcome. No matter what, your younger brother was injured in the capital of Qi Yuan. However, we still need to investigate at this time. The person who fought with your younger brother was taken away by my 6th brother. I still need to find my 6th brother to understand the situation, so I will take my leave first. If there are no accidents, I will be the first to give you an explanation at the welcoming banquet prepared for everyone in the palace tomorrow. That would be great. I will take my leave. Li Hongming took his leave. The Crown Prince of the former Wei's expression did not change. He asked a few questions out of concern, but it did not matter if he did not receive a response. He said to himself, however, 5th brother needs to be more careful in the future. After all, this is not the capital of the Wei dynasty. If something happens, that's enough. Eldest imperial brother, you should put away that act. There are no outsiders and everyone knows each other. There is no need to pretend. The Crown Prince of the former Wei showed a hint of helplessness. I know that 5th brother does not like me. I will not say much. You should recover well. He did not say anything like, I will seek justice for 5th brother. The Crown Prince of the former Wei was indignant. He drove the imperial physicians out and ordered them to prepare medicine. The others did the same. Only the right assistant minister of the Ministry of Personnel remained. Lord Hu, why did you accept Qi Yuan's imperial physicians? Lord Hu looked to be in his 40s. There was not a single strand of white on his beard. He sighed softly. Your Highness, this is not the Wei dynasty. The Crown Prince is more powerful. Moreover, because of His Highness the Crown Prince hates you as well. We do not know the situation of the imperial physicians that we brought. Even if they appear to be our men, they may have been bribed behind our backs. If they do something at this time, Your Highness, how dare he? The Crown Prince of the former Wei dynasty's face was ferocious. His eyes were full of murderous intent. Your Highness, the person who injured you is from Qi Yuan. The Crown Prince can use someone else to do the dirty work. Moreover, we are very clear about the relationship between the Wei dynasty and Qi Yuan. If the Crown Prince really wants to do this and something happens to you, he can take the opportunity to make things difficult for Qi Yuan. When news of this spread back to the country, even if His Majesty suspects something, he will not pursue the matter. He will only hold on to Qi Yuan and not let it go. Your Highness, think about it. Do you think His Majesty will pursue the fault of one of his sons for the sake of another? Or will he take advantage of his son's death to bite off a piece of flesh from Qi Yuan? The Crown Prince of the former Wei dynasty did not say a word. He knew very well what choice his father would make. His Majesty's ambition is Qi Yuan. He is more ambitious than any previous emperor. If the Crown Prince can make a contribution in this regard, he will not be at fault. Instead, he will be rewarded. The Crown Prince is very clear about this. Therefore, the Crown Prince will also interfere. He will appear even more sorrowful and make a bigger crusade against Qi Yuan. He will not pursue the truth. The Crown Prince of the former Wei dynasty huffed and puffed. Brother Crown Prince, Brother Crown Prince. Your Highness, don't say that the Crown Prince will not do that. The Crown Prince made a contribution and won His Majesty's favor. If he goes against the Crown Prince, His Majesty will definitely hate him. Do you think that the Crown Prince will do such a thing? Do Do you think that your life and death is more important to the Crown Prince than His Majesty's favor? Of course not. The Crown Prince of the former Wei dynasty knew very well that as long as it did not conflict with his interests, he would be his best younger brother. He would indulge him in every way possible and give him whatever he wanted. If he caused trouble, he would not hesitate to clean up the mess. However, if his interests were at stake, especially if it was related to the throne, the Crown Prince might personally kill him. If His Highness schemed against you and lost his life, His Highness the Crown Prince might be happy to see it happen and have an excuse to make things difficult for Chiyuan. After this matter is over, he might even make things difficult for His Highness the Crown Prince. Your imperial mother, your biological grandmother, and the power behind your grandmother would all be grateful to His Highness the Crown Prince and become more loyal to him. So my life and death will be used to the fullest. Then, he looked sharply at the Right Assistant Minister of the Ministry of Personnel, Lord Hu. You are the Crown Prince's man. Your Highness, to be more precise, I am your mother's man. The one who I really want to be loyal to is you. The Crown Prince of the former Wei dynasty was shocked. He could even hear the terrifying and soul-shaking thing in Lord Hu's words. Help. Lord Hu acted as if he did not hear anything. Your Highness, you should know that the imperial family of the Wei dynasty has always been prejudiced against the alien race. You don't have alien blood, the Crown Prince of the former Wei dynasty said coldly. Your Highness, you are wrong. Not only do I have alien blood, but my father is also a pure alien. The Crown Prince of the former Wei dynasty could not believe it. How is that possible? It's a long story. My father is not my father. Instead, he is the enemy who killed my father. If not for the fact that I look like my mother most of the time and have no alien characteristics, I might have died along with my mother. There is nothing wrong with Great Wei's northern expedition to expand its territory. For the sake of the country's stability, they incorporated the alien race. However, deep in their bones, they reject the alien race and believe themselves to be superior. Under the same conditions, the original citizens of the Wei dynasty can be put in more important positions. On the other hand, with alien blood, even if they are more capable, they will have to work 10 times harder. Even so, they might not be able to compare to the original citizens of the Wei dynasty. Your Highness, do you know? This subject is filled with hatred and unwillingness. Truly unwillingness. If your Highness is the one who ascends the throne, then this situation will completely change. We are not changing a dynasty, but we will make the distinction between the original citizens of the Wei dynasty and the alien race. Everyone will become citizens of the Wei dynasty. More capable people will be able to serve the Wei dynasty better, making the Wei dynasty stronger, and even achieving unification. As for the former 5th Prince of Wei, it was very obvious that he was deeply attracted by the blueprint he had drawn. The unwillingness and injustice that had been suppressed in the bottom of his heart had all emerged. That's right, why couldn't he be the emperor? Why must he be suppressed by the Crown Prince and ordered around by him? So what if I have alien blood? Am I not a citizen of the Wei dynasty? If I become the emperor, I will change the unfavorable situation of the Wei dynasty. Then, I will definitely lead the Wei dynasty to become unprecedentedly powerful. I will also become an emperor for all eternity. At this moment, the bloodthirsty and cruel 5th prince of the former Wei dynasty's ambition was completely revived. Lord Hu will always help this prince, right? Of course. Moreover, those officials with foreign bloodlines will all stand on the side of His Highness the 5th prince. Deliberately revealing his background as evidence was naturally to gain the trust of the other party. The 5th prince of the former Wei dynasty's heart became more and more heated. Lord Hu accepted the imperial physicians of the Qi Yuan because they can not only restrain the imperial physicians we brought, they will also do their best to treat this prince. After all, they absolutely do not want anything to happen to this prince. Killing someone and killing someone are two completely different things. Your Highness is wise. It's just that your Highness's actions today are somewhat inappropriate. In the past, because you had no choice, people mistakenly thought that your highness was somewhat unrestrained and unreliable. However, we all know that your highness is only doing this to better protect yourself. Your highness is actually clear-sighted and has great talent and bold vision. In the future, your highness does not have to be like this all the time. It will be more advantageous for your highness to appear more stable and reliable appropriately. The fifth prince of the former Wei dynasty was somewhat guilty. That was really his true temperament. He did not do it on purpose. However, as the emperor, he definitely could not be like this. Therefore, he admitted that there was a misunderstanding. Since you know, this prince will naturally not disappoint you. Lord who revealed an expression of pride. This subject will tell them that following your highness is absolutely the right thing to do. The fifth prince of the former Wei dynasty revealed a matter-of-fact expression. Right now, does Imperial Mother know? Course she knows. Imperial concubine Xian has made many plans for your highness. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6654176. HTML. Please click here to report an error. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book. www.bicken.com mobile version reading website. Bicken. Chapter 393. The people in the room lowered their voices and continued to talk about something. The imperial physician brought by the former Wei had prescribed medicine, but their fifth prince refused to take it, even if it was for external use. Of course, this matter was quickly reported to the first prince. Because they had just settled down, the eldest prince rested for a while and leisurely watched the maidservant brew tea. When the maidservant handed him the teacup, he did not take it. Instead, he held her hand and leaned forward with a faint smile. It seemed like he was going to drink the tea from her hand. The maidservant blushed and her hands trembled. She did not dare to look him in the eyes. However, the eldest prince did not say anything and only looked at the maidservant quietly. Therefore, every time the maidservant stole a glance at him, she would be able to meet his eyes immediately. It made people think that he was always looking at her and that she was the only one in his eyes. He was a prince, a noble, and she was just a lowly servant. How could she withstand such an attack? Without much hesitation, she wanted to lean into his arms. At this moment, someone came in to report that the former Wei kingdom's eldest prince naturally took the teacup and sat back down. Come in. The maidservant was still in the same position and did not know what to do. The eldest prince smiled at her and said, "You can leave first." Only then did the maidservant come back to her senses. She replied weakly with reluctance, but when she didn't get a response, she turned around and left. She snorted coldly at the person who came in. Obviously, in her opinion, if this person hadn't suddenly appeared, she would have already been. The person who came in was puzzled and touched his nose. He did not know how he had provoked this beautiful maidservant, but he did not ask. "Greetings, Your Highness. What's the matter?" The former Wei kingdom's eldest prince took a sip of tea and looked at the teacup in his hand. It looked very ordinary, but it attracted all his attention. The person explained the matter concisely. The eldest prince finally gave the person who came in a look. "He is guarding against me. He thinks that I will kill him." The person lowered his head and did not say anything. If he wanted to live long, then he had to pretend that he did not hear some words even if he heard them. Since he is willing to continue to suffer, then let him be. When the imperial physician from Qi Yuan comes, just bring him over. There is no need to report back. "Yes, Your Highness." When only the former Grand Prince of Wei was left in the room, the smile on his face didn't change. He played with the cup in his hand and muttered, "The Crown Prince tried to frame me, but he is more likely to do it than me. He really is a brainless idiot." However, once this idiot made a ruckus regardless of anything, the destruction was immeasurable. I just arrived and didn't even have time to catch my breath before something happened. I don't know what's going to happen next. Guards. The attendant guarding outside came in. Your Highness, what are your orders? Yi Ning probably doesn't know about Fifth Royal Brother's injury. She has always been close to Fifth Royal Brother. Go and inform her so she can visit Fifth Royal Brother when she has time. Yes, Your Highness. The former Wei Kingdom's Princess Yi Ning not only brought the most things, but also the most people. In the post house, the space that was originally allocated to the former Wei Kingdom was not enough. It still needed to be adjusted. It should be known that if the space next to the post house was moved, then there might not be enough space next to it. After all, the post house was the same as the imperial palace. There were advantages and disadvantages in terms of geographical location. The people from which countries were allocated to which places had been decided long ago and could not be easily changed. This change might cause trouble. Now that the former Wei Kingdom occupied the space next to the post house, there might not be enough space next to it. If the post house was moved one by one, then it would only be the former Wei Kingdom. At most, the Qi Yuan's people would have to work harder. But what if several countries moved in together? Once they moved in, who would allow them to move again? Although it seemed like a small matter, they could definitely accuse them of not taking them seriously. Then it would escalate to a diplomatic issue between countries. Therefore, the space next to the post house could not be moved easily. It was also very troublesome to move it. The best way was to move Princess Yi Ning to another place. After all, in the past, the former Wei Kingdom's envoys who went to Qi Yuan lived in this place. There had never been a situation where there was not enough space. Moreover, it was more than enough. Logically speaking, even if there was a princess following them, there would be no problem with more things and more people. However, Princess Yi Ning was a little too much. Since it was a special situation, it was understandable to move Princess Yi Ning. The problem now was that Princess Yi Ning did not want to move. Her excuse was quite dignified. She was like a girl. Since she went out with her brothers, she naturally had to live in the same courtyard as them. There was no reason for her to live elsewhere. Moreover, the people who served Princess Yi Ning said that their princess was a little timid. She was unfamiliar with the place and people and would be afraid to leave her brothers. Of course, they didn't say it so bluntly, but this was what they meant. The official from the Ministry of Rights who stayed behind tried to persuade her, but it was useless. He just wanted to scratch his head. Moreover, because he was a man, he couldn't see Princess Yi Ning in person. His subordinates insisted that it was their princess's idea. Not only that, they also repeatedly urged the officials from Qi Yuan to make the arrangements quickly. Their prince and princess were generous and didn't care about the fact that Qi Yuan didn't arrange the accommodation in advance. However, they couldn't deal with it for a long time. Their master was not a good-tempered person. The official from Qi Yuan almost cursed directly. It was obvious that they were looking for trouble. However, he couldn't deal with it. He couldn't argue with a group of women, so he had to go back. Don't look at the matter of Li Hongming seeing Princess Yi Ning and seemingly feeling the immortal qi on her body. In fact, she was also very unhappy in her heart. The originally planned itinerary was rushed at the back so quickly. Her whole body was about to fall apart, unusually uncomfortable. It would be strange if she was happy. However, she had no choice at all. Eldest brother seemed to have a good temper, but in fact, he was very hypocritical. He was a smiling fox. When fifth brother was patient, he could coax her. When he was impatient, he was quite scary. Even if the Empress's mother and the Crown Prince's brother were here, she didn't dare to be too rash. It was not easy to get here, but the accommodation was not arranged well. How could he not be angry? Not to mention discussing. He didn't directly make a scene, which was all ready to protect the image of the former Wei. The former Wei Crown Prince's people sent people here at this time. Princess Yi Ning didn't show it on her face, but in her heart she scolded. "Serves you right." Then she said a few words, saying that she was still busy here, and that she would go and see fifth brother after she settled down. Speaking of which, Princess Yi Ning had a lot of opinions towards her two elder brothers. In fact, she also knew that the post house that Qi Yuan specially gave to Great Wei was already big enough. She had once gone in to take a look at her own country's post house, and it couldn't compare to this place. For all the people from Great Wei who came, if it was a little more crowded, it could be arranged. Thinking about how noble she was, she could endure a little more crowded. However, that good elder brother of hers, according to the normal accommodation arrangement, the entire place was basically divided into 5 equal parts. The 3 of them siblings each occupied 1 place, and the remaining officials occupied 2 places. Was this a problem? It was not a problem. According to the master's identity, it was reasonable to divide the area. The problem was that, in the entire envoy group, she occupied a little more than half of the people. Needless to say, there were more than half of the people and 2/3 of the things, but the result was only 1/5 of the territory. How should she arrange it? How should she arrange it? It was not her who wanted to come to Qi Yuan, and it was not her who wanted to bring so many people and so many things. Now, it was thrown to her to deal with. The trouble was still in Qi Yuan, so, in essence, it was the former Great Wei who was looking for trouble. When Lu Chengdi learned of this matter, he naturally did not have a good expression. Luo Peishan consciously stood up. He went to deal with it. Originally, it was the Ministry of Right's job to receive the envoys from various countries. During this time, Li Hongming went to Jin Qin Wang Fu. Because they had reconciled, Li Hongyuan naturally did not block him at the door. But even so, it did not mean that Li Hongyuan would like to see him. Knowing the purpose of his visit to Jin Qin Wang Fu, he directly asked someone to take him to see He Zhihai. Li Hongming's expression changed slightly, but he did not say anything. Li Hongyuan did not want to see him, but he did not want to see Li Hongyuan. But in the end, these were 2 different things. The other party did not want to see him, which meant that Li Hongyuan did not want to give him face. But, this kind of thing, there was really no way to haggle over it. When he saw He Zhihai was surrounded and beaten by the people of Jin Qin Wang Fu. The ordinary bodyguards of Jin Qin Wang Fu were well trained, and Li Hongyuan ordered He Zhihai not to fight back. If he hurt the bodyguards of Jin Qin Wang Fu, he was not to visit again in the future. This was a real threat to He Zhihai, so, at this time he was miserably surrounded and beaten. Li Hongming was surprised. What is going on? And Yi stood at the side expressionless. Replying to Wang Ye, our master said, since He Gongzi fought with someone, the other party can still stand properly. It can be seen that He Gongzi's fists are like cotton and must be well trained. If you want to beat someone, you have to be beaten first. Li Hongming couldn't help but twitch his mouth. To be able to speak crooked logic and absolutely carry it out, other than Li Hongyuan, there was no one else. Thinking of the miserable appearance of the former Wei's 5th prince, how could he stand properly? Did it have to be unable to get up, unable to move, to be called not good? But he couldn't care less. Since He Gongzi is training, Ben Wang will not disturb him. If he could take the person away, he probably wouldn't have to come in. Several servants of the He family were also present at the time. They should be clear about the previous matter. Ben Wang will go ask them. Those people's injuries are not light and are currently healing. So, I am afraid that Wang Ye will have to move. No matter, lead the way. Since he had said so, could Li Hongming still put on airs and say no? Even if he was unhappy in his heart. Actually, this matter was quite simple. The cause, the result, everything added up in a few sentences. There was no conspiracy, no ups and downs. Li Hongming had also heard of the former Wei's version of events. Comparing the two, Li Hongming didn't know what kind of expression he should show. In his opinion, He Gongzi was just looking for trouble. He was just a commoner, so what if he really humiliated him? However, since it had escalated to diplomatic relations between the 2 countries, then there was no doubt that he had to stand firm on his position of Qi Yuan people cannot be humiliated so easily. Thus, his expression was unusually serious, Ben Wang will report this matter to Imperial Father and let the former Wei's people know that Qi Yuan people cannot be humiliated. All right, in short, from a commoner's face, it had risen to the entire Qi Yuan's face. Therefore, people like Li Hongming were really enough. No matter how fake these words were, as a person of Qi Yuan, he also had to stand firm on his position. As long as Qi Yuan was there, he would not waver. Li Hongming left Jin Qin Wang Fu. In his heart, his dislike of He Zhihai rose to a new height. Stirring up trouble and looking for trouble. He was already busy enough. Li Hongming entered the palace. Luo Peishan had already left the palace. Luo Peishan also didn't bother with Princess Yi Ning. He was a man and an official. The other party was a woman and a princess of another country. This was etiquette. No matter what, he couldn't make any mistakes. He naturally went to look for the person in charge of the former Wei. When the former Wei's eldest prince found out that a minister of Qi Yuan had come, he naturally couldn't neglect him and quickly invited him in. Luo Peishan was full of elegance and even had a bit of immortal aura. He treated the former Wei's eldest prince with the respect that should be shown to a prince of another country. He also seemed to show some concern for the younger generation. Under normal circumstances, for a person in a higher position, if a person of lower status than them assumed the attitude of an elder, no matter if the other party was taking advantage of their seniority or purely showing concern, it would make people feel disgusted. They only had one thought: what kind of thing are you that you dare to assume such an attitude? However, Luo Peishan didn't make people feel disgusted at all. Instead, it was like a spring breeze. When the former Wei's eldest prince realized this, he had already chatted happily with Luo Peishan for a while. Naturally, he became vigilant. In fact, it didn't have any effect. Luo Peishan didn't pry into anything and just chatted for a while. After the foreshadowing was done, it was time to get to the main topic. Great Wei and Qi Yuan have the same inheritance. Great Wei has always considered itself as the most orthodox inheritance. In this regard, Qi Yuan is somewhat lacking. Hearing Luo Peishan's words, the former Wei's eldest prince was naturally a bit proud. He even said a few words humbly. For example, a lot of things were taken away at that time, especially various books. Qi Yuan also appeared after that. It was understandable that some things were broken. Although that was what he said, it was a joke if he really cared about it. Back then, the Wei's emperor and his officials left the capital in a hurry. The things they took away were definitely limited. It was understandable that they took more practical things like gold and silver. Moreover, even if they took away a lot of books, a country was so big. The books in the capital were nothing. It would be a joke if some inheritance was broken because of this. Luo Peishan smiled and didn't get angry. He even praised a few people. Then, naturally, the topic turned to the precautions between men and women. After hundreds of years of change, Qi Yuan's requirements for women were not as strict as before. It couldn't be compared to Great Wei. Even Princess Yi Ning's accompanying this trip was probably an exception. Her clothes were also influenced by her family. All these things must be because Princess Yi Ning was extremely favored. Even the Emperor and Empress of Great Wei couldn't bear to be harsh on her. Everyone knew and understood the pitiful hearts of parents in the world. As long as there were no problems in major matters, they would act. It was just a small matter to pamper one person. The former Wei's eldest prince's expression became a bit stiff. So everything was waiting for him here. He should have known earlier. How could he be so complacent? On the surface, he said that Great Wei was good in every way. In fact, he was just mocking them for saying one thing and doing another. They casually took their princess out of the country. Who knew what the hell was going on about the precautions between men and women? The emperor and empress could spoil a princess without any principles. Could they also do stupid things without any principles? The former Wei's eldest prince thought quickly and was about to open his mouth to refute, but Luo Peishan was not done yet. The former Wei was a country of etiquette and paid the most attention to ancient etiquette. This time, they did not inform Qi Yuan that Princess Yi Ning would accompany them. They did not tell them how many people they would bring. It was probably because they were too busy and forgot. However, it did not matter. Occasionally, some things were not taken care of. Everyone understood. It was also their fault for not preparing a place for Princess Yi Ning. So, to express our apology, Qi Yuan is willing to arrange another place for Princess Yi Ning. It is also within the range of the courier station, but it is on the side close to the imperial palace. Perhaps it is a little remote for the whole courier station, but the scenery inside is more pleasant. Moreover, it is close to the imperial palace, so there is no need to worry about her safety. It is also more convenient for her to go in and out. It is not a big deal now, but in a few days the envoys from other countries will arrive. Living next to the Great Wei, there has never been a female family member. Great Wei pays attention to this, so it should be better for the princess to avoid them. After all, the princess cannot not go out. As for the other envoys, they are all here for the emperor's birthday and for the sake of the friendship between the two countries. Luo Peishan spoke at a leisurely pace, openly praising and belittling the prince. However, he had already taken responsibility for the prince's mistake, and was even more concerned about the princess's reputation. If the prince did not follow his lead, it would mean that he doubted the prince's dogma and was slapping himself in the face. The former Wei crown prince had nothing to say. So, he had wanted to cause trouble at the beginning, but in the end, he had dug himself into a pit. Your Excellency is right. It was indeed this prince's fault for not thinking things through. Now that I have to trouble Your Excellency, please forgive me. At this point it was better to simply admit it. After all, if the prince insisted on not agreeing, it would not be the Qi Yuan who would lose face, but the Great Wei. As the person in charge, he would be the first to be punished when he returned. Everyone makes mistakes. Moreover, the first prince has little experience, so it is understandable for him to have made some small mistakes. The former Wei crown prince could not maintain the expression on his face. The entire Great Wei had been openly praised and belittled, and now he was being insulted as well. But did Luo Peishan say anything? No, he was just following the former Wei crown prince's words. Therefore, the former Wei crown prince could only swallow his anger and swallow his anger. This old man is a foreign subject, so it is inconvenient for me to meet Princess Yi Ning. Please convey our apologies to the first prince. Your Excellency is too polite. This was originally our fault. Luo Peishan was not modest at all. He nodded, as if acknowledging the former Wei crown prince's words. The former Wei crown prince almost choked on his breath. He had to admit that he had seen it for himself. Although there were such people in the Great Wei, it seemed that his country's people were a little weaker. The matter was done. Luo Peishan was busy today and had other important matters to attend to, so he took his leave first. The former Wei crown prince could only see him out personally. Outside, Luo Peishan instructed the officials from the Ministry of Rites to do their best and not be negligent. The official from the Ministry of Rites, who had been troubled by Princess Yi Ning before, now had a feeling of reverence for Luo Peishan. It was like the endless flow of water. Princess Yi Ning had also made up her mind to waste time, but she did not want to wait for her eldest imperial brother. The former Wei crown prince only explained the matter in a soft voice. Princess Yi Ning wanted to fly into a rage on the spot, but it was clear that the former Wei crown prince understood his sister quite well, so he was not angry, and his smile did not change. Yi Ning, did you forget the purpose of coming to Qi Yuan this time? Princess Yi Ning's face was ashen, and her beautiful eyes seemed to be about to spit fire. The former Wei crown prince suddenly reached out and touched her eyes. Princess Yi Ning subconsciously dodged, and slapped the back of the crown prince's hand. The crown prince did not care, and even twirled his fingers as if he was reminiscing. Yi Ning's eyes are really beautiful. Even if you are angry, you are so moving. No wonder His Highness the Crown Prince likes you so much. What nonsense are you talking about? Princess Yi Ning was unable to restrain her anger, and there was some panic in her expression. Nonsense. Look at what Yi Ning is saying. Did I say something wrong? Not only His Highness the Crown Prince likes you, but many people like you, including Father Emperor, other brothers, and me. So many people like you, shouldn't Yi Ning be happy? Princess Yi Ning's expression was very ugly, but she did not say a word. The former Wei Crown Prince smiled again. Yi Ning, let the subordinates prepare. You have a lot of things, and if you delay any longer, who knows when you will be busy. It doesn't matter when you are in Great Wei, but it is better to be careful outside. After all, we represent Great Wei. If people think that we Great Wei people are undisciplined, it will not be good. In fact, it doesn't matter if I lose face, but if Great Wei loses face, you will be the sinner. Who did this to you? Princess Yi Ning could not bear it and screamed. Who did this to you? Who did this to you? Didn't you want to bring the things and people? Even if you didn't, did you refuse? Without you we can relax easily. You should be very clear how much trouble you have caused along the way. That's not right. How would Yi Ning know? You're the apple of Imperial Father, Empress, and Crown Prince's eyes. You can have whatever you want. It's just a matter of saying a word. How can it be troublesome to just say a word? You've never done anything. Naturally, you can't experience the troubles of others. Since you brought it out, you naturally have to be responsible. You want others to give it to you. The Crown Prince leaned closer and lowered his voice. Who do you think you are? What right do you have? Yi Ning, I am not the Crown Prince. However, it is not without effect for you to cause a ruckus. Yi Ning, if you don't want to suffer, be obedient. Otherwise, you may not even see Father Emperor and the Empress for the last time. Princess Yi Ning was so angry that her whole body was trembling. The hatred in her eyes was almost tangible. The former Wei Crown Prince sighed softly. The more I look at you, the prettier you are. Yi Ning, don't look at me like that. Otherwise I might do something. Princess Yi Ning's expression instantly became fearful. She subconsciously crossed her arms in front of her chest, her face full of vigilance. The former Wei Crown Prince smiled again. I just want to dig it out and keep it. Yi Ning, aren't you thinking too much? After all, I just like Yi Ning's eyes. After saying that, he seemed to have lost his interest and patience. He turned around and left without hesitation. Princess Yi Ning was startled. Then she covered her face with both hands and squatted on the floor in the room, breaking down and crying. The servant girls outside heard it, but none of them had the intention to go in and take a look. They lowered their heads and pretended not to hear anything. As for the others, after receiving the Crown Prince's orders, they did not dare to delay. Fortunately, many things were not opened yet, so it was not troublesome to put them away. The things were moved out one by one. Qi Yuan also sent many people to help, so the moving was very fast. In the end, Princess Yi Ning was escorted out by the servant girls. She covered her face with a veil. Her eyes were not red or swollen. They were still lively as if they could speak. There was nothing strange about them. The Crown Prince followed beside her. The atmosphere between the brother and sister was harmonious. It seemed that the relationship between the brother and sister was very good. However, Princess Yi Ning was not ostentatious on the way. She also rode in a very normal carriage. In fact, the place arranged for Princess Yi Ning was just as Luo Peishan said. The location was only a little remote compared to the rest of the post house. In fact, the location was very good. The scenery inside was also very beautiful. It could be said that it was much better than the previous place. Princess Yi Ning was not happy at first. Now that she saw the place, her mood improved a lot. She even sneered in her heart. This place might really be safer. While she was still tidying up here, there was news that another country had arrived. It was much smaller than the former Wei and Qi Yuan. The country was called Chong. Even if there was a prince, they only arranged for people below to welcome him. Not to mention the prince, even the assistant minister of the Ministry of Rights did not get to see him. Even so, they did not dare to have any objections. It was just that there was a difference in language. People from the Honglu Temple had to follow them all the way. Speaking of which, in this country, the people from the Honglu Temple were only sent to the former Wei for decoration. The others, no matter how big or small, needed people from the Honglu Temple. People from the Chong Kingdom heard that the former Wei had arrived. It had to be said that they were quite surprised. Under normal circumstances, it was normal for a big country like this to arrive a few days before the emperor's birthday. If a big country was going to a small country, it was not impossible for them to arrive on the same day. For a country like the former Wei, it was very strange for them to be the first to arrive. In all likelihood, there were things that they did not know. However, these small countries could not interfere with the affairs of these big countries. They had to be obedient and do what they should do. Of course, they had to inquire about things that they should inquire about. They had to make it clear and understand so as to avoid conflict. The people they inquired about were the people from the Qi Yuan's Honglu Temple. They would definitely tell them what they could know. After all, if they really did conflict, the people from the Qi Yuan's Honglu Temple would also take responsibility. And if these small countries did not want to know, the people from the Qi Yuan's Honglu Temple would certainly not tell them. This was the best and safest way. The next day, Lu Chengdi held a banquet in the palace to welcome the former Wei's envoy. He also made friends with the people from the Chong Kingdom. No matter how small a country was, it was still a country. He still had to give them some face. Although under normal circumstances, if the Chong Kingdom was the first to arrive, at most they would send a prince to hold a banquet outside the palace. This prince would most likely not be a prince with real power like Prince Kong, Prince Rui or Prince Gong. But because there was a princess in the Chong Kingdom, this banquet would definitely be different. Not to mention other things, at least there must be women present. Therefore, Lu Chengdi simply waved his hand and added a few outsiders to the family banquet. Since it was a family banquet, then the concubines who held real power and the princes who had already been conferred the title of prince could not be left out. As for the officials, they had to be excluded. This arrangement seemed to be giving the former Wei Tian a lot of face. However, since it was a family banquet, it meant that they treated you as one of their family. How could one treat a family member the same as a guest? Obviously, it was absolutely impossible. The former was much more casual than the latter. Casual also meant that some things could not be fussed over. The three members of the former Wei's imperial family brought along their entourage of officials. The rest of the people were naturally very few. They first paid their respects to Lu Chengdi according to the rules. As for the Chong Kingdom, only 10 people entered the palace, and only 3 of them were qualified to stand in front of Lu Chengdi. Compared to the people from the former Wei, they were really a bit pitiful. However, the 3 people from the Chong Kingdom didn't have the slightest strange emotion. Although they were just hitching a ride at this banquet, for them it could be considered as flattering. After the formal greeting, they naturally prepared a string instrument as well. Lu Chengdi personally brought them over. These envoys saw that many people were already present and knew their identity from their clothes. Moreover, there were basically women beside them. The officials wouldn't bring women to the reception banquet of other countries' envoys. They were puzzled and looked at each other in confusion. In the end, they didn't ask and didn't mention it. However, seeing that there were women present, Princess Yi Ning's heart calmed down a lot. She was originally worried about what would happen in the end. If it was better, they might arrange for someone else to receive her, or the concubines or other princesses. She didn't want to face a bad situation. It was probably that she, a woman, was mixed in with a group of men. At that time, she would be as conspicuous as possible. Even if she was used to being surrounded by stars, it was only in a group of people who were lower in status than her or in the palace. The emperor of a country that was on the same level as the former Wei, a group of princes, Wangya, and officials who held great power would no longer flatter and fawn on her. Instead, they would size her up and even have deep malice. Just thinking about that atmosphere made her afraid. Fortunately, she suddenly felt a trace of gratitude to Lu Chengdi who made such an arrangement. After greeting each other, they all sat down. The others basically sat in pairs. Only Princess Yi Ning sat alone. To be honest, the former Wei had praised Princess Yi Ning very highly in the beginning. Now, Qi Yuan's behavior was simply not inferior. Other than being considerate, it seemed that they did everything for Princess Yi Ning. However, this kind of thing no one dared to ask about it. On the other hand, the first prince of Qi Yuan wanted to say something a few times. Perhaps he wanted to say something serious, but he was blocked by Lu Chengdi every time. Lu Chengdi smiled kindly and seemed to be genuinely happy. He said bluntly that now he just wanted to eat, drink, enjoy the dance and listen to music. He didn't want to talk about anything else. In this way, the first prince of Wei couldn't do anything. After all, Lu Chengdi was the emperor. He was at the same level as his father. If he didn't say anything, he couldn't even say anything. As a guest, it was definitely not a wise move to make the emperor unhappy. As for the fifth prince of Wei, his injuries were definitely not light. In fact, it was not suitable for him to attend. With the medical records of Qi Yuan's imperial doctors, Lu Chengdi wouldn't have any objections even if he didn't attend. However, he insisted on attending and even pretended that nothing had happened. If it weren't for the bruises on his face, one wouldn't be able to tell that he had been severely beaten up yesterday. However, He Zhihai didn't specifically hit his face. Otherwise, even if he wanted to come out today, he definitely wouldn't be able to do it. The first prince of Wei was originally prepared for his fifth brother to rest at the post house. However, when he went out, the other party was already waiting for him. The other party said a few words of concern and said that he didn't need to force himself to go. The emperor of Qi Yuan was not an unreasonable person. However, his fifth brother not only didn't appreciate the kindness, but also mocked and ridiculed him. The first prince of Wei was almost angered to death. It should be known that once this person showed up, some things were hard to say. He didn't know why the other party went crazy, but he couldn't do anything to him. What was the fifth prince of Wei crazy about? He didn't care before, but now he was a person who was going to do great things. He had to be exposed to more things and see more things. Moreover, he naturally couldn't let his good brother monopolize the limelight. Therefore, his performance was actually a bit more active than the former Grand Prince of Wei. If he wasn't toasting a cup of wine with Lu Chengdi, then he was pulling Prince Chiyuan, who was opposite to him, to chat for a bit. It seemed that he had a sense of propriety and was just right. After seeing how arrogant he was yesterday and seeing how he was now, to be honest, some people really wondered if the fifth prince had a twin brother who looked exactly the same. The fifth prince had changed his unruly clothes, and his temperament was much more restrained. He was a little forthright, but he controlled it so that people wouldn't dislike him. On the contrary, people might even like his true nature. Even Lu Chengdi's expression was a little strange. He originally wanted to completely blame yesterday's incident on the fifth prince, but now it seemed that he couldn't bear to do so. Moreover, Lu Chengdi said a few words of concern in advance about the matter that he didn't want to mention. The first prince of Wei's heart was in his mouth. Just as he was about to speak up for his stupid brother, the other party beat him to it. "Thank you, Your Majesty of Qi Yuan, for your concern." Fine. Speaking of which, yesterday's incident was also a misunderstanding. I've always respected brave warriors. Yesterday I was itching to fight, so I made a move. Later I found out that he was the son of General He. I've been friends with this person for a long time, but I didn't expect to meet him under such circumstances. The first prince of Wei's face immediately darkened. He wanted to get up and slap this brainless thing to death. On the other hand, the people of Qi Yuan all had strange expressions on their faces, especially Li Hongming, who had seen the fifth prince of Wei's miserable state yesterday. That time he was still talking tough. How did he change his attitude in just one night? Moreover, based on the relationship between the first prince of Wei and Qi Yuan, it was strange for him to say such words. However, this was a good thing for Qi Yuan. After all, the fifth prince was seriously injured in their territory. No matter how they quibbled, they couldn't change this fact. There was no benefit in biting the fifth prince of Wei. Since the victim didn't say anything, they could only be a little more magnanimous. So that's how it is. Speaking of He Ji Hai, this boy has never returned to the capital before. This time he just happened to come back. Maybe it's your fate. When the fifth prince is in Chiyuan, you might as well exchange some pointers with him. After all, it's a rare opportunity. Lu Qingdi laughed. Learn from him. The fifth prince of Wei's chest and abdomen couldn't stop throbbing. If this happened 2 more times, he might lose his life. His face was a little stiff. He braced himself and said, if there's a chance, he wouldn't let this happen again. The first prince of Wei's face darkened. He didn't say anything else. Everything was messed up by this idiot. In fact, the first prince of Wei couldn't figure out what this idiot was trying to do. It was fine if he didn't know the severity of his actions when he was in Dawei, but he still acted like this in such an occasion. If he really didn't know anything, putting aside the true relationship between Dawei and Qi Yuan, his performance was impeccable. Even the first prince of Wei would be amazed. Therefore, it was definitely not that he didn't know anything. However, the first prince of Wei really couldn't figure out what he was trying to do. What was the fifth prince of Wei trying to do? The first prince would never have thought that he had such a huge ambition that he shouldn't have. He wanted a position that he had never thought of before. Therefore, a matter that could cause a lot of problems came to an end. It was really unexpected. Quite some time had passed, but a certain seat in Qi Yuan was still empty. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6654180. HTML. Please click here to report an error. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book. www.bicken.com mobile version reading website, Bicken.com. You're tuning in to the Whispers of Romance YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.